Welcome to this D's Romance Library, my amazing viewers. Thank you for always listening to my exciting stories. You all have been a blessing to me. To my new viewers, you are welcome to my channel. I promise you'll enjoy every piece of my work as you listen. I want you all to grab your popcorn and sit tight for this exciting story. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button if you find this channel interesting. Also, like and share my video to family and friends too. I love you all. Alright, let's get started. Chapter 1. Many call me the moon goddess, but my name is Calypso. While some believe I am the mother of wolves, I am, in fact, the mother of many mythical beings. Over the countless years of my existence, I have given birth to werewolves, fairies, pixies, witches, griffins, kitsune, dragons, druids, centaurs and mermaids. My brother, Hades, created the darker creatures, the ones that visit your nightmares. Vampires, sirens, banshees, Cerberus, Wendigo, the dark fae, kraken, and other terrifying beings. When my siblings and I were born, our father gave me dominion over the light, through which I birthed all my beautiful creations. Hades, driven by a hunger for power over all of us, particularly our brother Zeus, was granted control over the underworld. In his thirst for power, Hades kidnapped Zeus and Hera's son, Hercules. Stripped of his divine title, Hercules was raised on earth. The pain this caused Zeus and Hera was overwhelming, but despite the trials, Hercules grew strong. He made both his earthly and divine parents proud by saving both the heavens and the earth. After earning his divine title once more, Hercules declined it, choosing to live a mortal life with his true love. Seeing their love inspired me to give a gift to all my creations, soulmates. I imbued my creations with the ability to find a mate, a being with whom they would share an eternal deep bond, the one person who would love them more than anyone else. Over the years, I have watched many mates find one another, fall in love, and have children who continued this legacy. I've decided it's time to share some of those stories, the ones that will soon be told as legends. The first story I wish to share is that of a mermaid, the great-granddaughter of Poseidon, the former king of the sea and my youngest brother. Poseidon, who was granted dominion over the seas by our father, was made king, and I transformed him and his mate Amphitrite into merfolk. Amphitrite became the first queen of the sea. Together, they founded the great kingdom of Atlantica, the home of the merfolk. Amphitrite bore 3 children, Triton, the eldest, and Ursula and Morgana, his younger sisters. When Triton reached adulthood, he took the throne from Poseidon, which made Ursula and Morgana bitter with jealousy. Ursula devised a plan to trick Triton's youngest daughter Ariel into signing a contract that would take her voice and transform her into a human, so she could pursue a prince she had fallen in love with. Ariel's innocence nearly cost her everything, but with the help of her love for Prince Eric, she managed to defeat Ursula and return to the sea. King Triton, heartbroken over Ariel's struggles, gifted her with legs, transforming her into a permanent human, and she had a daughter named Evelina. Seeing Ariel's joy only angered Morgana, who tried to deceive Evelina. However, Evelina ultimately thwarted Morgana's plot. A new world was born as Triton dismantled the wall that had once separated the human and merfolk worlds. Evelina was given a choice, to live in the human world or remain in the mer world. She chose to stay with her true mate Corwin, whom she had met under the sea before knowing her heritage. Once Evelina left the human world to be with Corwin, war broke out between the humans and the magical world. Humans grew greedy for the magic my creations possessed. They began to fear and hunt the magical beings. Wolves were hunted, mermaids were trapped in nets, and pixies were caught in traps. A new law was enacted, prohibiting mermaids from going ashore, and all magical creatures were forced to stay hidden within the enchanted forest. With the help of Zeus, humans began to forget the existence of these creatures, and they soon became nothing more than myths and legends. Evelina had 2 children, Thaddeus, whose name means liberator, and Isla, whose name means enduring. Isla, often called Kit, was just as beautiful on the inside as she was on the outside, a gift I gave her, along with a voice that mirrored her grandmother's. A new law was then declared, preventing mermaids from going ashore. When Isla was born, she was loved and cherished by all. Her older brother, Thaddeus, loved her most of all and wanted only to protect her. Unlike Isla, Thaddeus was a stickler for rules. He was determined to follow them, believing that a king should do so. Chosen by King Triton as the heir to the throne, Thaddeus spent every waking moment learning the duties of a king, looking forward to eventually taking on the title. However, Isla had no interest in following the rules. Chapter 2. Thaddeus, have you seen your sister? Evelina asked, entering the throne room. She bowed respectfully to King Triton, who sat beside Thaddeus on his throne. Triton nodded to her before turning back to Thaddeus, who seemed uninterested in his mother's arrival. These days, Thaddeus was far more concerned with learning the ways of ruling a kingdom than finding his mate and future queen. She's fine, mother, Thaddeus replied. You know Kit, she's probably off exploring Shipwreck Cove again. He waved her off. Evelina sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose, prompting a chuckle from Triton. Irony is quite the thing, Triton remarked. Your mother was the same, always missing important family events. Be glad that Isla has never missed anything important. I'm afraid she is just like me and my mother. Both of us were tricked easily, my mother by Ursula, and me by Morgana. It was too easy for them, and I'm afraid something might happen to Kit. Evelina fretted. King Triton rose from his throne, placing a gentle hand on Evelina's shoulder. Do not worry, Triton reassured her. Nothing will harm her. She is just a young mermaid finding herself. Give her time. My sisters have long since passed, and there is no real danger anymore. The only danger we face now is from humans. Shipwreck Cove is safe, only the dead humans are there. Isla knows better than to go to the surface. We've all taught her better. Evelina sighed and smiled at her father before swimming off to find Corwin and warn him about their daughter's latest disappearance. Corwin wasn't surprised at all. He knew Isla's curiosity would always lead her into trouble beyond the kingdom's boundaries, and he'd never once tried to stop her. I do worry about her. She's my sister, and I love her. But she's too strong-willed, and I don't trust her decisions. She's going to get hurt, and I don't want to worry about her when I take the throne, Thaddeus said, turning to King Triton. I understand your concerns, Thaddeus, but there's nothing we can do to change your sister. She's as stubborn as you. The only thing we could do is nail her tail to the palace floor, Triton chuckled. She needs constant supervision. If she had a mate, it would settle her down, Thaddeus added. Thaddeus, the moon goddess gave us mates as a gift, and we mustn't squander that gift, Triton replied firmly. Thaddeus shook his head. Triton felt strongly about the gift of mates, especially after the loss of his own, Queen Athena. I understand, grandfather, but she needs to be trained for more than just combat. I'm glad she knows how to defend herself, but she also needs to learn how to be a wife and a mother. As a princess, she must act accordingly. She can't keep running off without someone with her. She should have a handmaiden and guards with her at all times. After all, she's a princess, Thaddeus stated firmly. King Triton nodded in agreement, recognizing that Thaddeus had already made up his mind. It seemed that this could be Thaddeus's first real challenge as the future king. Thaddeus went to his parents with his decision to assign a lady's maid and guards for Isla. They were hesitant but agreed, respecting their future king's choice to protect their daughter. Everyone knew Isla wouldn't be happy with this new rule. She cherished her freedom, and constantly being followed would surely limit that. Alfie, my cousin and Beta, I need your help, Thaddeus called out. Alfie, his most trusted ally and head of the guards, quickly responded. Anything you need. I need you to assign 2 guards and a handmaiden to Isla. Alfie's eyes widened in surprise, and he had to fight back a laugh. She won't like this, but I will do as you think is best, Alfie said. Alfie had always been loyal to Thaddeus, even as a child, respecting his decisions, no matter how challenging. He knew assigning guards and a handmaiden to Isla wouldn't be easy, but it was Thaddeus's order. He felt bad for the guards who would have to keep Isla in check. I might ask my mate Mabel to be her lady's maid. At least they get along. I do think Isla might cause some trouble, she hasn't even turned 18 yet. I'm aware of her age, cousin. But she needs structure. I can't keep worrying about her actions. Please make sure Mabel is in Isla's chambers by the end of the day. Consider it done. Chapter 3. Just a few miles south, in Shipwreck Cove, Isla and her best friend Flower were exploring the latest shipwreck swallowed by the sea. Just like her grandmother, Isla was fascinated by all things human. Isla was one of my descendants, and despite her reckless nature, I admired her passion. I always enjoyed watching her adventures, especially how they drove Triton and Thaddeus to distraction. Triton was more relaxed, while Thaddeus tended to worry more. Triton believed everything would work out in the end, just as it did for Ariel and Evelina. Isla had never seen a human, and to avoid sparking more curiosity, she'd never heard the stories about her grandmother or mother. Her family had kept these secrets from her, realizing early on that her spirit was too strong. Isla, I hate it when you drag me here, Flower complained as she followed Isla toward another sunken ship. Oh Flower, stop being such a baby. Don't you think it's amazing? Isla asked, twirling around and running her hand along the mast. My mother always knows when I've been with you. The last time we came here, she grounded me for a week. She says human things are dangerous, and we shouldn't go near them. I don't understand how something so wonderful can be bad. Please Kit, let's go. I'm going to be late for dinner. Isla sighed and turned to Flower. Yeah, Thaddeus has probably figured out where I've gone, and he's going to lecture me again. Can you blame him? You're a handful, Flower laughed. Isla wrinkled her nose and stuck out her tongue before swishing her tail at Flower, who burst into laughter. Both Flower and Isla were born under the same moon and had never been apart. Just like their mothers before them, they were best friends. They did everything together, and much to Flower's dismay, that also meant getting into trouble. All right, let's head back. They made their way back to the castle, parting ways as Isla swam toward the throne room, where Thaddeus was waiting with his arms crossed and a stern expression. Isla knew what was coming. Every time she left the kingdom, she returned to the same scene, a scowl, crossed arms, and a long lecture. She assumed this time would be no different. Isla, where have you been? Thaddeus asked, his voice firm. Just exploring, nothing to worry about, she replied with a laugh, trying to swim past him, but he blocked her path. No, you don't get to tell me to calm down. I wouldn't have to worry about you if you didn't constantly get yourself into trouble. I shouldn't have to stop my royal duties just to keep you out of trouble, he snapped. My royal duties are shaking hands and kissing babies, Isla retorted, further aggravating Thaddeus. You're a princess, and it's time you started acting like one. These 2 guards will be with you until you're mated. Mabel is waiting in your chambers, and she'll be your lady's maid, he said sternly. Isla pulled back slightly, her gaze locking onto her brother as she fought the sting of tears. Seeing this did not soften Thaddeus's expression, but it did soften his heart. He loved his sister and wanted the best for her, but he had to focus on the kingdom. He couldn't keep chasing after his 17-year-old sister while the kingdom needed him. Isla swam out of the throne room, passing the guards who followed her to her room and stationed themselves outside. At first, the 2 guards had been excited to be assigned to the princess, who was around their age. Like the other unmated males in the kingdom, they had hoped to one day be her mate. She was beautiful, with almost white blonde hair and eyes that sparkled with shades of blue and purple. Her tail was unique, covered in white scales with hints of light blue and purple. Mabel, I just want to be alone, Isla groaned, flopping onto her bed. Princess, I know this isn't what you wanted, but let's make the best of it. Now, I need to get you ready for tonight, Mabel said as she moved to the counter. What's happening tonight? Isla asked, sitting up. The future king is hosting a ball. My mate mentioned that he hopes you'll meet your future mate there. All the unmated males from the neighboring kingdoms have been invited, Mabel replied softly. Isla felt anger rising within her. She didn't want to meet her mate through some formal, planned event. She wanted it to happen naturally. During her travels, she'd visited other kingdoms, but she hadn't met her mate. She felt that the moon goddess had orchestrated it that way. So much for the spontaneous meeting with my mate. Now it's all been arranged. She had always dreamed of the moment when she would meet her mate, when they would lock eyes and she would feel the pull. It was supposed to be the one thing in her life that couldn't be controlled. But now, Thaddeus had taken charge of that too. Chapter 4. A knock on the door broke the uncomfortable silence. Come in, Isla called, turning away from the door as her mother entered. I'm guessing you've heard about tonight? Evelina asked, sitting down on the edge of the bed. Yes, and I absolutely hate the idea. But I know I have no choice. It feels like I'm being put on display for everyone to look at. Mother, I wanted my meeting to happen naturally, but this doesn't feel right, Isla admitted. Sweetheart, I understand, but you know how your brother is. He just wants what's best for the kingdom, Evelina replied. And what about me? Isla huffed. Evelina sighed, knowing her daughter was right. Both she and Mabel understood this well. Sometimes things don't go the way we hope, Evelina began, but Isla cut her off. How can you say that? You and Dad met by chance, just like that. You've always told me that he was visiting a neighboring kingdom, and that was it. It wasn't forced for you. Why does it have to be like this for me? Isla recalled the version of the story she had been told all her life. Evelina opened her mouth to speak, but Isla kept going. Has it always been like this? Us daughters being blindly obedient to the men in our lives? You've never done anything for yourself. You've never left this kingdom, and you've always said that was the same for your parents before you. I don't want to spend my whole life stuck in this kingdom. If my mate doesn't come here, I'll never meet him. Mabel, please give me and my daughter a moment alone, Evelina requested. Mabel nodded, bowed, and left the room. Evelina moved to sit beside Isla on the balcony. Isla, there's something about our family history I need to tell you. There's so much you don't know. Isla swallowed nervously as she listened, her mother beside her. Your grandmother, Ariel, was just like you. She longed to know more about the world above. She was so fascinated that she saved a human from drowning. Isla's eyes widened in awe. She fell in love with him and made a deal with Ursula so she could walk on land, Evelina continued. Isla's jaw dropped. My grandmother walked on land? Evelina nodded with a smile. I was born on land. Isla swam forward, her mind racing with new information. How is that possible? She asked. It's a long story. You know about Morgana and Ursula, right? Evelina asked. The sea witches who were exiled for witchcraft and attacking the crown? Actually, there's more to it. When your grandmother was your age, she made a deal with Ursula for legs, so she could be with her mate, your grandfather. Ursula took advantage of her and used her to seize control of the trident. Your grandmother and grandfather stopped her, but years later I was born, and Morgana, using my love of the sea, manipulated me to steal the trident from your great-grandfather. Isla's eyes went wide again. You stole the trident, she gasped. Evelina smiled softly. I was young and naive. At the time, I didn't know he was my grandfather. Morgana manipulated me, and I thought I was doing the right thing. When I realized the truth, I fought against her to return it to him. How did you end up back here? Isla asked. During my adventure to steal the trident, I met your father. When I had to choose between being on land or in the sea, I chose here. Why hasn't anyone told me this before? Does Thaddeus know all of this? Evelina tilted her head, offering a sad smile, and Isla's lips pressed into a thin line. Of course he knows, because everyone can be trusted, except me. Why did you all lie to me? Kit, we thought we were protecting you. We thought that if you knew the truth, you'd want more to go to the surface, Evelina explained. Of course I would. All this time, I felt like an outsider in this family. I thought there was something wrong with me for wanting more, for feeling like something was missing. And all this time, both you and my grandmother felt the same. You had a choice, something I'll never have. Isla snapped, turning away in frustration. Kit, Evelina said softly, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Isla pulled away and swam to her bed. I need to get ready. Please send Mabel in on your way out. After Evelina left, Mabel returned to help Isla prepare for the event. She helped her wrap her chest in a shimmering fabric, which she then tied around her neck. Mabel slid small pearls onto her ears and placed a matching tiara on her head. For her entire life, Isla had felt like an outsider in her family. She always thought it was her fault. But learning that her grandmother shared the same feelings validated her. It gave her a sense of belonging, and she wasn't going to apologize for that. Chapter 5. There was a knock on the door, and Isla opened it to find her older brother standing there. He looked at her, then extended his arm for her to take. As much as Isla wanted to argue, she didn't dare. She took his arm and stayed silent as he led her to the ballroom. Just as they were about to enter, Thaddeus paused and bowed his head toward her. I understand you're probably still angry with me, but it's only temporary. Once you meet your mate, you won't need the guards or Mabel. It's for your protection, he said, trying weakly to mend their strained relationship. Isla's anger flared, and she yanked her arm from his. Funny how mother didn't need guards or a lady's maid when she was sneaking to the ocean to steal the trident, or when her mother made a deal with the sea witch for legs, she snapped. His eyes widened in shock as Isla swam ahead and entered the ballroom, knocking into the person announcing the arrival of the royal family. The announcer quickly said her name as everyone turned to look at her. All the males puffed out their chests, hoping she was their mate. Isla fought the urge to roll her eyes as Thaddeus followed her. "You're expected to have at least 3 dances," he grumbled. "Screw you, brother," Isla spat venomously before swimming over to the refreshments table where Flower was talking to Liliana. Just as Isla was about to greet her friends, a hand tapped her shoulder. She turned around to see a muscular blonde male with a green tail. He had a black tattoo on his left arm, known as the Protector Mark, indicating he was a guard, though not from the royal court. He was attractive, but Isla already knew he wasn't her mate. She felt no spark, no recognition, no desire to touch him. "Princess Isla, I would be honored if you would grace me with your first dance of the evening," he said. Isla glanced over at Thaddeus, who was watching her, then looked back at the young male in front of her. She nodded and extended her hand. "Of course," she replied sweetly. His smile widened as he led her to the dance floor. Isla looked around the room and saw her brother's approving gaze and her parents' joyful smiles. They wanted her to play the doting princess and daughter so badly, but she wanted more. "What is your name?" Isla asked, her hands resting on his muscular arms. A knock sounded on the door, breaking the awkward silence. "Come in," Isla called, turning away from the door as her mother entered. "I assume you've heard about tonight?" Evelina asked, sitting down on Isla's bed. "Yes, and I absolutely hate the idea, but I know I have no say in the matter. It feels like I'm being put on display for everyone to judge. Mother, I wanted a natural meeting." "This isn't fair," Isla replied. "Sweetheart, I understand, but you know your brother. He just wants what's best for the kingdom," Evelina explained. "And what about me?" Isla huffed, feeling frustrated. Evelina sighed, knowing her daughter was right. Both she and Mabel were aware of this. "Sometimes things don't go as we wish," Evelina began, but Isla interrupted. "How can you say that? You and Dad met by chance. You always told me he was visiting a neighboring kingdom, and that was it. It wasn't forced for you, why does it need to be forced for me?" Isla retorted, recalling the version of the story she had heard her entire life. Evelina opened her mouth to respond, but Isla continued, "Has it always been this way? Us daughters being blindly obedient to the men in our lives? You've never done anything for yourself. You've never left this kingdom, and you've always told me that was the same for your parents before you. I don't want to spend my life stuck in this kingdom. If my mate doesn't come here, I'll never meet him." "Mabel, please give me and my daughter a moment alone," Evelina requested. Mabel nodded and left the room, allowing Evelina to sit beside Isla. "Isla, there's something you don't know about our family history. So much has been kept from you," Evelina said softly. Isla listened intently as her mother spoke. "Your grandmother, Ariel, was just like you. She was fascinated with the world above. She loved it so much that she saved a human from drowning." Isla's mouth dropped open in surprise. "She fell in love with that human and made a deal with Ursula to walk on land," Evelina continued. Isla was stunned. "My grandmother walked on land?" Evelina nodded. "I was born on land." Isla swam forward, processing this new information. "How is that possible?" she asked. "It's a long story. Do you know the tale of Morgana and Ursula?" Evelina asked. "The sea witches who were exiled for witchcraft and attacking the crown?" "Yes, but there's more. When your grandmother was your age, she made a deal with Ursula for legs, so she could be with her mate, your grandfather. Ursula took advantage of her and used her to seize control of the trident. Your grandmother and grandfather stopped her, but years later, I was born. Morgana used my love for the sea to manipulate me into stealing the trident from your great-grandfather." Isla gasped. "You stole the trident?" Evelina smiled softly. "I was young and naive. At the time, I didn't know he was my grandfather. Morgana tricked me, and I thought I was doing the right thing. When I realized the truth, I fought against her to return it to him." "How did you end up back here?" Isla asked. "During my adventure to steal the trident, I met your father. When I had to choose between staying on land or returning to the sea, I chose to come back. Why has no one ever told me this before? Does Thaddeus know? Isla asked, her curiosity piqued. Evelina tilted her head with a sad smile, and Isla bit her lip, nodding to herself. Of course he knows, because everyone can be trusted, except me. Why did you all lie to me? Isla snapped. Kit, we thought we were protecting you. We thought that if you knew the truth, you'd want to go to the surface more, Evelina explained. Of course I would. All this time, I felt like an outsider in my own family. I thought there was something wrong with me for wanting more, for feeling like something was missing. And now I know, both you and my grandmother felt the same way. You both had a choice, something I'll never have. Isla yelled, turning away, her frustration building. Kit, Evelina started, placing a gentle hand on Isla's shoulder, but Isla pulled away and swam to her bed. I need to get ready. Please have Mabel come in when you're done, Isla said, her voice strained. After Evelina left, Mabel returned to help Isla prepare for the evening. She helped Isla wrap her chest with a shimmering fabric, tying it around her neck, and then slid small pearls into her ears, placing a matching tiara on her head. For the first time, Isla felt like she truly belonged. The realization that her grandmother had shared her feelings gave her a sense of comfort, and she wasn't going to apologize for feeling this way. Chapter 6. As Isla prepared to leave, someone grabbed her hand. Leaving so soon? Kaylin asked. She smiled, exhausted from the 3 dances. Yes, I'm rather tired. He chuckled. Are you too tired for a little conversation? He asked hopefully. Would you like to join me in the gardens? Isla offered, smiling as Kaylin's face lit up. Yes, I'd like that, princess, he responded. Isla rolled her eyes playfully and flicked her tail at him. Call me Kit, she laughed, leading him outside. Thaddeus watched from a distance, smiling as he saw his sister finally acting more freely. Once outside in the gardens, Isla spun around, taking in the peace. Can I ask you something? She said, turning to face Kaylin. He nodded. Of course. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to go to the surface? Isla asked, leaning closer to him. No, I haven't, Kaylin replied firmly. Of course not, she said, turning away in disappointment. Well, that's not entirely true. I have thought about it a time or two, he admitted. Isla's heart fluttered with relief. She wrapped her arms around him and pressed a kiss to his lips. Pulling back quickly, she blushed and apologized, her face turning red. Kaylin smiled warmly and took her hand in his. Never apologize for a kiss, he said softly. She smiled back before kissing him again, but their moment was interrupted by a loud vibration above. What in the coral reef was that? Kaylin asked, looking at Isla, who had already started swimming toward the surface. He quickly followed her, but it was too late, her head had already broken the surface of the water. He surfaced just behind her. Isla, this is forbidden. Please come back with me, he urged. It was against mare law to go above the surface. Kaylin, please just a moment. I need to see it, she begged, as a loud thundering sound filled the air. Both Isla and Kaylin looked up, watching as the sky lit up with sparkling colors before fading away. Tears filled Isla's eyes as she watched in awe. It's so beautiful. I never thought I'd see the moon and stars so brightly, Isla whispered, mesmerized by the fireworks filling the sky. Isla didn't notice that Kaylin had swum back down to the depths. He raced into the hall, capturing the attention of all the guests as he approached Thaddeus and King Triton. Kaylin, where is Isla? Thaddeus asked, glancing around. Corwin and Evelina rushed over just in time to hear Kaylin's reply. She's above the surface. Isla, Thaddeus growled, pushing past Kaylin and racing toward the surface. Isla continued to watch the fireworks, following the source to a nearby ship. Against all logic, she swam closer and sat on the edge of the ship, peeking through a gap to watch the men on board dancing to a beautiful symphony of music coming from a radio, a sound she had never heard before. As she tried to get a better look, a hand gripped her tail and yanked her back into the water, dragging her away from the surface. She struggled, but eventually broke free, seeing Thaddeus, King Triton, her parents, and Kaylin in front of her. Thaddeus, she started, but was immediately interrupted. I've had enough. This is the last straw, Isla. Come with me, We need to talk in private, Thaddeus roared, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the palace. As they passed Caelin, his eyes were on the ground, feeling guilty. Isla wanted to be angry with him, but she couldn't bring herself to. She had broken the law, and he would have lost his status if he hadn't reported her. Brother, Isla began as she was dragged into the throne room. Don't call me that right now. In this moment, I'm not your brother, I'm your future king, and you will listen to me, Thaddeus snapped. Laws exist for a reason. You didn't just go to the surface, you were on a ship. Not just any ship, but Drake Storm's ship. His name literally means carnage and slaughter. Of all the reckless things you've done, this is the most foolish. Isla recoiled in fear. Brother, please. No, I can't take this anymore. I will be crowned king in 4 days, and I cannot keep worrying about you. You didn't meet your mate tonight, and that tells me you won't. He's probably dead, or you weren't blessed enough to have one, which doesn't surprise me, given your restless nature. Isla gasped. This was the cruelest thing he had ever said to her. After my coronation, you will be married to an unmated merman of my choosing. You will be a wife, and soon, a mother. Her heart shattered into pieces. Please, brother, she pleaded, but it was no use, he had already made his decision. It is King Thaddeus to you now. Go back to your chambers. Mabel will be with you shortly, he commanded, turning away from her. Isla couldn't hold back a sob as she quickly fled from the room and swam toward her chambers. What have you done? King Triton asked, emerging from the shadows after overhearing the entire conversation. I did what needed to be done. Her mate didn't reveal himself tonight, which means she doesn't have one. I'll make sure she's paired with someone of good standing, Thaddeus replied, calling for Alfie. Bring in Caelin. A few moments later, Caelin entered the throne room and bowed to both King Triton and Thaddeus. I apologize for my part in letting her go to the surface. I should have stopped her. Thaddeus raised his hand. Do not apologize for my sister's rebellious actions. I summoned you here to discuss something else. I've heard that you're not currently mated. Caelin nodded. Correct. My sister needs a mate, and I saw how well you two got along tonight. I know it's a lot to ask, especially since you're a young male who hasn't met his own mate, but I need someone willing to marry Isla, Thaddeus said. Caelin's eyes widened. I would be honored to marry someone like your sister. Caelin, you understand that if you meet your mate in the future, you won't be able to marry her, right? Thaddeus added. Caelin nodded, understanding the situation. I understand the implications, and I want nothing more than to honor my future king. Being married to my sister will be a lot of responsibility, Thaddeus warned. I understand, and I'm up for the challenge, Caelin said confidently. I'll go speak with her now. Chapter 7. Back in her chambers, Isla was crying uncontrollably. Mabel entered the room just as the guards took their positions outside. Mabel tried to help Isla remove her jewelry, but Isla angrily threw the rings and jewelry, letting them float in the air. Mabel quickly gathered them and placed them in the trunk where Isla kept her belongings. She then removed the fabric wrapping Isla's chest and tossed it aside before pulling Isla's hair over her shoulders to cover her bare breasts. She wiped the red color from her lips and flopped down on the bed. What's wrong? Mabel asked, swimming over to her. It's Thaddeus. He's making me marry someone who isn't my mate, Isla sobbed. Mabel's eyes widened. Oh Isla, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. I can't believe him. He's supposed to be my big brother. I wish he cared about me more than being king, she cried, the anger rising within her. Isla, that's not fair, and you know it. He's always been there for you, even when you've been difficult. He's becoming king, and he can't just think about you anymore. He needs to consider everyone in the kingdom, including the surrounding coves. You're almost 18 now, you should be thinking about your wedding and caring for your future children, Mabel said, wrapping a shawl around Isla's shoulders. Mabel, I want all of that. I want it with my mate. I thought he would have respected that. I can't remember the last time he treated me like a sister and not a burden. I hate what he's become. He's turned into a tyrant, Isla growled. Thaddeus, who had overheard the entire conversation, stormed in. Princess Isla, in exactly 7 days, you will marry Caelin Koa. Isla's eyes filled with tears as she swam over to him and pounded her fists into his chest. You're a monster, she screamed. Kit, please stop, Mabel pleaded, but her mate Alfie, who was posted by the door, shook his head. Enough. Thaddeus roared. You're no king, Isla spat. Thaddeus left the room, gesturing for Mabel and Alfie to follow him, leaving Isla alone. Kit, a voice whispered, capturing Isla's attention. She turned to see Kaelin sitting on the balcony railing. I guess you heard, she said as she swam over to him. He nodded as he entered her chambers. I did. That's why I'm here. I thought we could talk about it. What is there to talk about? She asked, flopping onto her bed as he sat beside her. Please don't be upset. This marriage is a blessing in disguise, Kaelin said softly. Isla shot up. How can you think that? Don't you care about your mate wherever he is, she said, throwing her arms up in frustration. Kaelin growled and grabbed her arm, squeezing it tightly. We are getting married. That's final. Accept it. I won't tolerate your complaining. Once we're married, you will not talk back to me like this. Isla pulled her arm from his grip and backed away against the wall. Leave. Now, she seethed. I am your superior. I don't take orders from spoiled princesses. You will obey me. Once we're married, you will do as I say. You'll fulfill every need I have and give me as many children as I want. It's already been decided. Your brother, the future king, agrees, Kaelin said arrogantly. Isla paused for a moment, then spoke with cold determination. As my future husband, you should understand how inappropriate it is for you to be in my chambers without a chaperone. Kaelin nodded but left, exiting the way he came. Isla felt her anger boiling over, realizing she was a prisoner in her own life. She had no control over what happened to her. Enough is enough, she muttered to herself, deciding that her time in Atlantica was over. She needed to leave. As darkness fell over the kingdom, Isla's plans were already set in motion. She chose not to bring anything with her, wanting to avoid delays or any reminders of her life here. This was her chance to be free, to be the person she wanted to be. As she was about to leave through the balcony, she glanced back at the room she had spent her entire life in. Just as she was about to leap into the unknown, a shadowed figure called out to her. Were you just going to leave without saying goodbye? It was Flower. I'm sorry. I can't stay here anymore. I don't belong here. Thaddeus wants me to marry Kaelin Koa. He's not right for me, and he's not my mate, Isla explained. I know. I'm going to miss you so much. Promise me something, Flower said, her voice shaking. Anything, Isla promised, taking Flower's hands in her own. Don't forget me, Flower said softly. Isla laughed and wrapped her arms around Flower. Impossible. Flower squeezed her tightly before letting go, allowing Isla to head for the surface. Moon goddess, please guide me, Isla whispered, as a current began to form to carry her to shore, exactly where she needed to be. Despite her fear, bravery coursed through her veins as she pulled herself onto the shore. From the moment she was born, I gifted her with beauty and song, but I also blessed her with the power of transformation. Unlike most merfolk, she had the unique ability to switch tails. This talent was typically granted to royal males and guards, but I knew she'd need it when the time was right. Isla sat on the ground, wiggling her toes for a moment before stretching out her legs and tucking them beneath her as she stood on her newly formed feet. Her balance was unstable, causing her to fall to her knees. Ouch, she whispered with a soft laugh. She stood again, taking a step forward, only to fall once more. Laughing to herself, she stood up once more. She glanced at her new form. With only the shawl wrapped around her, and the cool night air, she shivered slightly, unwinding the shawl around her chest and spreading it out. She wrapped the wet fabric around her body and tied it gently. Fortunately, it was just long enough to cover her but not enough to keep her warm. Isla walked a few yards toward the forest before pausing to rest against a tree. Pulling her knees to her chest, she wrapped her arms around them, trying to hold on to as much warmth as she could. Chapter 8. Thank you, Moon Goddess, she murmured before allowing herself to drift into a deep sleep. I sent a small burst of warm wind. Back in Atlantica, a storm was about to erupt. Your Majesty, Mabel cried, approaching the throne where King Triton and Thaddeus sat. What is it? Thaddeus asked, swimming forward with Alfie at his side, noticing Mabel's worried expression. It's Isla. She's gone. A chill ran down Thaddeus's spine as he looked down at the sea floor. He raced past Mabel towards her room, Triton, Mabel, and Alfie close behind. Sure enough, her room was empty. His eyes fell on her tiara, and he picked it up, holding it to his chest. King Triton turned to Alfie. "Gather all the warriors and tell them to find my great-granddaughter." Alfie nodded and swam off. "Kaelin, the reason I've called you here is because Isla is missing. Warriors have been sent out, and I trust you to lead the search. Find my sister, your future wife." Kaelin bowed his head. "Yes, your majesty. I will find her or die trying." Thaddeus nodded as Kaelin left to join the search for Isla, though none of them knew that Isla was no longer in the sea and had no intention of returning. Lucian POV. "Alpha Aiden, there's an intruder at the Pax borders," Jace said, rushing into my office. It had been almost 5 years since an intruder, other than a rogue, had entered our territory. I was curious. Despite being the Alpha King, I wasn't as ruthless as people expected. I always gave intruders a chance to explain themselves. My name means light, but when anyone threatens my pack, they will regret it. I became very protective after my parents were killed when I was 15. Now, at 25, I'm still without a mate. I don't have time for this. "Just get someone to shift and scare her off," I said, looking back at my paperwork. "Sir, I understand, but I thought I should inform you because she's a woman, and she's quite exposed," my beta replied, his face turning red. My curiosity was piqued again. I smirked at my beta before standing up and putting down my pen. "All right, I'll handle this wanderer. Keep out of sight but close by with my clothes." I removed my shirt and trousers, allowing my body to shift. As my arms stretched, my large paws scraped the floor. I arched my back and shook my tail before trotting toward the door. "Jessie said she's near the northern border," Jace confirmed from behind me. I picked up the pace and moved toward the border. As I neared, my wolf became restless. I stayed alert, unsure if this was some kind of ambush with a weak human as a distraction. I reached a clearing and stopped dead in my tracks. A single word echoed through my mind: mate. My wolf howled in joy. I crouched slightly behind a bush, watching her. I had never seen anything so stunning in my life. She stood by a tree with pink flowers blooming from it, gazing at them in awe as if she'd never seen flowers before. I inhaled her scent, lavender and sea salt, and shivers ran down my spine. She was human. My mate was human, but seeing her for the first time, I didn't care what she was. She was perfect. Her long platinum blonde hair cascaded down to her waist, her skin was flawless, and her eyes were light blue, almost purple with a mesmerizing shimmer. Her frame was small, but her arms and legs were perfectly toned. For a human, she was clearly strong. My gaze fell to her attire, a single piece of fabric wrapped around her figure, no shoes. Where had she come from, dressed like that? Suddenly, her eyes locked onto mine, and I froze. "Jace. Leave," I ordered through the mind link. I heard Jace place my clothes on the ground before swiftly leaving the area. I moved closer, letting her see me in my wolf form. I wasn't just any wolf, or even an alpha, I was much larger. For a human, she should have been terrified, but she didn't seem afraid. Humans didn't know of our existence, but since she was my mate, she was allowed to know. I took another step closer, and to my surprise, she took one toward me. A smile spread across her face, and I swore I felt my heart flutter. She wasn't afraid. I froze as she kept getting closer, smiling. She extended her hand toward me and smiled. As soon as her hand touched my fur, a surge of energy coursed through my body, and I guessed she felt it too, as she giggled. "Hello, my beautiful mate," she whispered. My heart skipped a beat. How did she know? She couldn't possibly know. Humans might feel a strong connection to their mate, but they don't experience the bond the way a werewolf does. I nuzzled closer to her, and she wrapped her arms around my neck, giving me another chance to breathe in her scent. I pulled back, and she tilted her head slightly as I moved towards the tree where I had left my clothes. I quickly shifted to my human form, pulling on the shorts and shirt Jace had left for me before stepping out to meet her again. When I looked at her, her eyes were scanning my entire body. Our eyes met, and her cheeks flushed. I smiled and took a step toward her, my heart pounding, but I didn't slow down. I stopped right in front of her, still smiling. She placed her hand over my heart, and I instantly felt calmer. "What's your name?" I asked, gently brushing her hair behind her ear. Isla. What's yours? She asked with a soft melodic voice. Aeron. Aeron, she purred, testing the sound of my name. Light. I grinned wider. Yes. What does Isla mean? It means enduring, she replied, reaching up to run her fingers through my hair. I nearly moaned at the touch. Please come with me. I'll go anywhere with you, my light. I felt like my heart was exploding with stars. That was the one thing I had always wanted to hear. I could die a happy man now. I never imagined meeting my mate would feel so incredible. I had spent years watching others meet their mates, settle down, and it made me pause. Most people found their mates in their late teens, but I was an exception. She nodded and took my hand as I led her out of the forest toward the pack house. As we walked, I realized my mistake. She was nearly naked, and anyone could see her, though no one was outside now, as Jace had instructed everyone to stay inside. I stepped in front of her, shielding her from view, and I felt her hands grip my shirt. Lydia, please come out here. I'm near the northern border. Bring a blanket. Isla stepped out from behind me to admire the house. Your house is beautiful, she murmured. I smiled. It's your house now too, I reminded her, and a smile spread across her face just as Lydia came running out with a blanket in hand. Isla ducked behind me. My heart soared, she already felt safe with me. Don't worry, little mate, it's Lydia. She's my little sister. Isla's grip on my shirt loosened as Lydia stopped in front of me. Aeron, tell me why I'm bringing you a blanket? Her eyes widened when Isla stepped out from behind me into full view. Jesus. Okay, I get it now, Lydia said, stepping forward to wrap the blanket around Isla. Isla ran her hands over the fabric, clearly amused. Aeron, who is this? Lydia asked, and I smiled proudly, wrapping my arm around Isla and pulling her close to my side. My mate, Isla. Finally, I'm so happy for you, brother. What on earth is she wearing? Lydia asked, staring at Isla. I turned to Isla, wrapping the blanket tighter around her. Come on, miss, let's get you cleaned up, Lydia said, pulling Isla toward the pack house. I smiled at the two of them, walking in front of me. Isla stopped and reached out her hand, which I gladly accepted. I had finally found my mate. Chapter 9. Moon Goddess POV. Isla didn't care that her mate was a werewolf. She had heard of them before, learned about them in her tutoring sessions. She never imagined she would meet one, let alone have one as her mate. She could sense his aura, and she knew he held royal status, meaning he was the Alpha King, the king of all alphas, the leader of all packs. He was kind and gentle, exactly what she could have asked for. She was thankful that he existed. After Thaddeus's cruel words, she had almost believed him when he said she didn't have a mate. She was guided into the pack house, where dozens of pack members stared at her with curiosity, but she paid them no attention, instead admiring everything around her. Everything she saw was new. Aeron quickly ushered Lydia and Isla upstairs to Lydia's room and shut the door behind them. Once the door was closed, Isla released her grip on the blanket and walked toward a dresser with a photo frame on top. It was a picture of a younger Aeron and Lydia with their parents. She lightly brushed her finger over the picture before turning back to see Aeron smiling at her. Aeron, out. I'll get her sorted. She can meet you in Mother's garden, Lydia said, shooing him out of the room. Isla walked toward Aeron, but Lydia stopped her. Don't worry, we'll get you washed and dressed, and you can see him again in a few minutes. Isla huffed in annoyance, which made Aeron laugh as the door closed behind them. Lydia led Isla to the bathroom attached to her room and began filling the tub with water. Okay, slide into the bath, and I'll get you some clothes, Lydia said, leaving the room. Isla looked at the water and the bubbles, smiling before stepping in. In seconds, her tail appeared, causing her to fall with a loud thud. Isla! Lydia yelled, rushing back to the closed door. I'm okay, don't come in. Isla replied, trying to keep the door shut with her hand. Nonsense, let me in. Lydia insisted. Isla sighed and let go of the door. As soon as Lydia saw Isla's tail, she screamed. Lydia, please be quiet, Isla begged, holding up her hand. You're a. Lydia stammered. I know, please help me, Isla said, holding out her hand. Lydia snapped out of her shock and crouched down to help her. Lydia, I heard a scream. Is everything okay? Can I come in? Aeron called from the other side of the bathroom door. Lydia glanced at Isla, who shook her head and gave her pleading eyes. Damn it, Lydia muttered. We're both okay, Aeron. I slipped, that's all. Isla splashed water everywhere, Lydia said, pretending to be annoyed. Can I come in? I want to see Isla, Aeron asked, concern in his voice. I'm okay. I'll be out soon. I'm currently indecent, Isla called back. Seconds later, her tail disappeared, leaving her naked. If you're sure, Aeron called, then left Lydia's room. Isla sighed in relief, grabbing her shawl and pulling it over her body. What the hell? Lydia whispered, her voice rising. I can explain, Isla said, standing up and leaning against the bathroom counter. Lydia flapped her arms. I'm not from around here, obviously. I'm from a city called Atlantica. You clearly saw what I am. I'm here because I ran away from home. Lydia pinched the bridge of her nose and sighed. I must be dreaming, she laughed. You're not dreaming. Please, don't say anything. I just met my mate, and I want to learn about him before I bring all of this to him. Okay. After some time playing with the bubbles in the bath, Isla was cleaned up and dressed, standing on her human feet once again. Lydia led her to their mother's private garden, a place where no one was allowed except the alpha and those he permitted. Aeron hadn't arrived yet, so Isla wandered through the garden, admiring the flowers. Chapter 10. Isla wore a light pink dress that reached her knees, decorated with white flowers. Her hair was styled with 2 braids, half up, half down. She looked stunning. After a while, Isla heard laughter and singing from the field near the house. As she walked toward the sound, she paused and smiled at the sight. A group of women and children were gathered around a fire, singing songs. As she got closer, a child noticed Isla and walked over, taking her hand to lead her toward the group. The women greeted her warmly. My name is Chloe. What's yours? The little girl asked. My name is Isla, but you can call me Kit, Isla replied softly, still holding the little girl's hand. Isla sat cross-legged on the ground, and the girl climbed into her lap, snuggling against her chest. Just then, Aeron walked over, noticing how well his mate was fitting in. He smiled widely as someone approached him and commented, You have a beautiful mate. How did you know? Aeron asked, still gazing at Isla. A mother knows, she said with a smile. Aeron glanced at his mother, Annalise, and kissed her cheek before turning back to admire his mate, who had the whole group captivated as she began to sing. Others from the pack house came out, drawn to her voice. Children who had been running around found their mothers and began to fall asleep in their laps. Once Chloe had fallen asleep in Isla's lap, Isla gently lifted her and placed her in her mother's arms while continuing to sing. When she finished, Isla looked over and saw Aeron standing there. She skipped toward him and wrapped her arms around him in a hug, which he returned. You're late, she said, giggling and raising her eyebrows at him. No, I'm not, Aeron laughed, pulling away from her. Isla, this is my mother Annalise, Aeron said, bringing his mother closer. Isla smiled wider and pulled Annalise into a hug, making Aeron's heart swell. Pleasure to meet you. Please call me Kit, she said as she pulled away. Annalise smiled at her, stroking her arm. Kit, pleasure to meet you, my dear. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. You'll be perfect to keep my Aeron happy, she said, laughing as she pinched Aeron's cheek. Mother, please, Aeron whined, rubbing his cheek while Isla laughed. Now if you'll excuse us, Mother, Isla and I have a date, Aeron said, offering his arm to Isla. She jumped up and wrapped her arm around his, saying goodbye to Annalise. They walked off to a private part of the garden that Aeron had been preparing for his mate. As a child, he had started planting flowers, hoping to give them to his mate one day. When he opened the gate, Isla walked in and was in awe. It's beautiful, she exclaimed, still gazing around the garden. In her entire life, Isla had never seen a garden like this. It's yours, Aeron said, smiling at her. She stopped and turned back to him, unsure if she had heard him correctly. As a child, I dreamt of having a mate, but never in a million years did I imagine anything as perfect as you. From a young age, I started making this garden for my mate. I just hoped she would love it, he said, laughing as he looked down at the floor. Isla smiled softly before walking over to him and placing a soft kiss on his lips. Aeron was initially shocked but quickly kissed her back, wrapping his arms around her and pulling her closer. The kiss was passionate but gentle. Wow, Isla hummed softly. Isla had only ever kissed one person before, Kaelin, her ex-fiancé, and she regretted that. She felt ashamed that her first kiss had been with such a monster. Isla, you knew I was a wolf and knew I was your mate. How? He asked finally. He had wanted to know since they met, but he hadn't asked until she seemed settled. Isla looked up at him and twirled a finger around her hair. My parents told me about werewolves and mates. You seemed bigger than other wolves, and I felt a strong connection with you, she admitted. It was true. She had been told about werewolves who worshipped the same moon goddess, but it had never happened that a wolf was paired with a mermaid. Long before they were even stars in the heavens, I had planned for them to be mates. I had to break the cycle. The merfolk world and the human world should live in harmony again. It was time the laws changed. Once Triton finds out, I'm sure he'll be furious with his favorite auntie. And when Thaddeus finds out. Back in Atlantica, things were tense. People were nervous after the princess disappeared, and Thaddeus grew guiltier with each passing day, unsure of what had happened to her. Kaelin only became angrier, knowing his fiancée had run away from him. His heart only grew darker. Aeron smiled back at Isla. Your parents knew about mates. Incredible. Not many humans know about werewolves. It makes things easier. I was worried you'd be afraid of me. He sighed in relief. Isla felt guilty for lying to Aeron. She knew she had to tell him the truth, but she was running from her past and didn't want to bring it with her. Where are you from? Maybe we can go back and meet your parents. Aeron asked hopefully. We can't. I never want to go back, Isla said, turning away. Why? Did they hurt you? Aeron asked, stepping closer, his wolf growing agitated at the thought of anyone making his mate sad. No, nothing like that. They never listened to me. They wanted different things for me. If they knew about us, they would never let us be together, Isla explained, hugging Aeron and burying her face in his broad chest. Why? Aeron asked, hurt. He was an alpha and a powerful one at that, incredibly wealthy. Any parent would be happy for their daughter to marry someone who would care for them. Their species shouldn't matter. They're old-fashioned, and it's not really my parents, it's my older brother Thaddeus. Your brother? Why would he care more than your parents? Aeron asked, pulling away from Isla. Because he's a bossy blowfish, she grumbled. Aeron laughed, having never heard anyone describe a person like that before. You're weird, little one. Aeron, please, may I retire to my chambers? I'm awfully tired, Isla said, stretching and yawning. The way she spoke confused Aeron. She spoke very formally for a young woman. Very delicate, he thought. Of course, I'll see you in the morning. Let me walk you back to your room, Aeron said, trying to match her formality. Thank you. They linked arms and slipped through the back doors to avoid other pack members. Aeron escorted Isla to her room, placing a kiss on her cheek before whispering, Good luck, my love. Isla's brows furrowed as she closed the door behind her and turned to find Sienna sitting on her bed. Jumping jellyfish, Sienna, you scared me. Isla exclaimed, pressing her hand over her heart. Aeron walked down the hall, smirking as he made his way to his room. Well, I want all the details. Sienna said, bouncing off the bed and rushing toward Isla. Isla smiled and walked past Sienna, starting to undo the braids in her hair. Nothing to tell, Isla hummed as she shook her long hair loose. Liar. Did you tell him? Sienna asked, earning a pointed glare from Isla. Shoo. No, I didn't, and I don't plan to right now. I'm finally happy, and I don't want to spoil that by bringing it up, she whispered. Sienna rolled her eyes. You do realize he's your mate, and if you get all emotional like that again in front of him, you won't be able to hide it. I'm sorry for keeping this a secret from your brother and the alpha. It's selfish of me, Isla said, rubbing her temples. Kit, it's not that. I just don't want it to come out the wrong way. She was right, Isla knew that, but she enjoyed not being the mermaid princess for once. She wanted to savor that normal life as long as she could. Chapter 11. Sienna was right, but Isla just wasn't ready to tell Aeron everything. Everything felt perfect now, She was finally a regular person, with her mate, feeling safe. The next morning, Isla woke early, bathed, and left her hair down. Sienna showed her how to apply makeup, and Isla preferred these lipsticks over the ones she used back home. The clothes were different too, nicer and more modest. Sienna explained to her about modesty, how not to reveal too much. For the day, Isla chose a light, white skater dress with a floral pattern. Once dressed, she made her way to the kitchen. It took her a while, as each pack member she passed wanted to meet their new Luna. Everyone already adored her, and Aeron was thrilled by that. He had feared that they wouldn't accept a human Luna, especially since it hadn't happened for a long time. When Isla finally entered the kitchen, she greeted the Omegas, those of lower rank in the pack. No Luna had ever greeted the Omegas before, so they were shocked when Isla did. "Morning, everyone," she beamed brightly. The female Omegas bowed before continuing to prepare breakfast. "What can I do to help?" Isla asked, walking over to one of the Omegas who was chopping fruit. They exchanged uneasy looks, wondering if it was some kind of trick. No Luna had ever shown such interest in helping. Most were kind, but they didn't go out of their way for the servants. "Luna, you don't need to help us. Sit, and we can make whatever you like," one Omega said, guiding Isla to a seat at the island. "No, please let me help," Isla insisted sweetly. She had never been allowed to do anything back at home, and she didn't want to be treated the same way here. "If you're sure, Luna," the woman replied, smiling at her. "Thank you. My name is Isla, what are your names?" she asked as she tied an apron around her waist and pulled her hair up. "My name is Kelly, this is Dawn, Millie, and Ellie," the Omega said. Isla smiled at each of them and began helping with breakfast. "Let's put on some music," Isla said, suddenly excited. She turned on the radio and began dancing around the kitchen, making the Omegas laugh. They quickly warmed up to her. Isla danced around, pulling Kelly into a dance with her. Everyone laughed as Aeron and his mother, Annalise, walked into the kitchen. As soon as the Omegas saw the Alpha and former Luna, they stopped singing and dancing and bowed their heads. Aeron had a stern expression on his face as Isla accidentally bumped into him. When she turned to face her mate, her smile faded. It seemed like he wasn't impressed. With a sweet and innocent look on her face, Isla sprayed whipped cream all over Aeron's face and shirt. Annalise and the Omegas gasped in surprise. After a brief silence, Aeron smiled, scooped Isla up, and threw her over his shoulder, causing her to scream. The Omegas burst into laughter. Annalise laughed too, happy to see the pack house filled with laughter again. After the food fight, the pack gathered outside to eat together, like a big happy family. Isla used the opportunity to meet everyone and introduce herself. Days passed, and Isla and Aeron grew closer each day. As time went on, Isla made friends, and the pack fell more in love with her. She showed signs of being a great Luna. No one cared that she was human. Meanwhile, Kaelin was watching from the shadows, growing angrier by the second, seeing another man's hands on his fiancée. That's when he began to make plans to take her back and punish her. "Isla, we need to talk about something," Aeron said as they sat on the grass. "As the new Luna of this pack, we need to hold a Luna ceremony. You'll be officially crowned Luna, and I will mark you as mine. All the neighboring packs will be invited." Isla had never heard of these ceremonies, but they couldn't be worse than the ball her brother threw to force her into meeting and mating with someone. "Okay, Aeron. I look forward to it. When will it be?" she asked. "We've already started making arrangements. We've planned it since long before I met you, but I wanted to wait a few days before announcing it. I didn't want to spring it on a human all at once." Every time Aeron referred to her as human, Isla wanted to laugh. "When will it be, Aeron?" she asked again. "Tomorrow," he replied softly, expecting a complaint, but she just nodded and kept eating her ice cream. "Pig," Sienna teased as she sat beside them on the grass. Isla stuck her tongue out at her, causing Aeron to laugh. "That's not very ladylike," Sienna teased. Isla rolled her eyes and kept eating her ice cream. They squabbled like sisters. Isla longed for a sister to be close with. Her brother had once been her best friend, but as he grew serious about being king, he stopped being a friend and became more like a drill sergeant. Thoughts of her brother and her family filled her mind, and tears started to form in her eyes. Aeron noticed and sat closer to her. "Hey, what's wrong?" Aeron asked, wiping a tear away. "Oh Kit, I'm sorry. I was only joking, Sienna said, wrapping her arm around Isla. Isla laughed and sat up straight. No, it's not that. I'm just feeling homesick. I didn't think I would feel this way, she said, laughing but avoiding eye contact. Are you sure you don't want me to take you back to visit? Aeron asked. Sienna exchanged a knowing glance with Isla and sighed. No, I don't. I have too much to think about. The ceremony is tomorrow, so I should start thinking about what to wear. Sienna, can we go look? Isla asked as she stood up. Sienna stood too and looked down at Aeron, who appeared upset. Chapter 12. Aeron was disappointed. He knew Isla was hiding something, but he thought it was related to her family. He didn't realize how deep the secrecy went. Sienna gave her brother a reassuring nod before taking Isla's ice cream and handing it to Aeron. I think you've had enough of that, Sienna said with a grin. Isla whined in protest as Sienna dragged her away from Aeron. It was so good. Isla complained. Yeah, I know, but do you really want to look like you're 6 months pregnant tomorrow? Sienna laughed. What's prego? Isla asked. Sienna stopped in her tracks, staring at Isla in surprise. Pregnant. Sienna repeated, shocked to find that Isla still didn't understand. This left Sienna confused, but she stayed quiet until they reached Isla's room. Once inside, Sienna closed the door and gently guided Isla to the bed, where they both sat. You don't know what pregnancy means? Sienna asked, astonished. Isla shook her head. How do mermaids reproduce? Sienna asked, feeling awkward as the words left her mouth. Mermaids shouldn't exist, and no one had heard of them. When Triton re-established the law to separate the two worlds, a spell had been cast to ensure that mermaids remained nothing more than fiction. Eggs, Isla chuckled, shrugging. She didn't understand why this was such a big deal. To her, this was the natural way. Mermaids and mermen married, mated, and the female produced eggs that the male fertilized. What is pregnancy? Isla asked, still curious. Sienna chuckled nervously before sighing. Ugh, I never thought I'd have to explain this to anyone but my future children, but now I'm explaining it to a fully grown mermaid, she groaned. Well, when mates meet and complete the mating process, instead of laying eggs outside, the woman keeps the baby inside her. She carries it for 9 months, and when the time comes, she gives birth, Sienna explained, trying to keep it as simple and awkward-free as possible. Oh my, I will have a baby inside me? Isla asked, her eyes wide in shock, staring down at her stomach. Yes. One day, Aeron will give you a baby, and you'll carry it for him and help bring it into the world, Sienna said. Isla's eyes stayed wide as she looked at her stomach. How will a baby fit? She asked, glancing at Sienna. Your belly will get bigger to make room for the baby. We have a pack member named Lucy, and she and her mate are expecting a baby. You can meet her tomorrow when she gets back from visiting her parents in her old pack. But whatever you do, don't say anything to anyone. We don't want anyone knowing that you're not human, Sienna warned. Isla nodded, placing her hand on her belly, and silently made a wish. Please, moon goddess, I want a child when the time is right. Please bless me with one. I hear your prayer, Isla, came the soft response. Isla, I think it's time we finally get you your own wardrobe, Sienna said, pulling her up and leading her out. They went to a shopping mall, escorted by 2 guards as per Aeron's request. Isla was in awe as she admired everything on the way there. When they arrived, she jumped out of the car and stared at the huge building. Wow, this is a big house, Isla said. It's not a house. How did you get clothes back home? Sienna asked, linking arms with her. I didn't wear clothes. I only had shawls or jewelry to cover my chest. Someone would make a bracelet or something. Everything was handmade from whatever they found, Isla explained. Wow, that's unbelievable. They entered the shopping center and spent time picking out a whole new wardrobe for Isla before stopping for lunch. Oh, there's one more store I forgot. Guys, please stay outside for this one. I don't think you'll want to go in. Aeron definitely won't like it, Sienna said with a laugh, pointing to a lingerie shop. Their faces turned red as they glanced at each other before nodding to Sienna. Why must they stay outside? Isla asked. Because we're buying you underwear and nightwear. It's personal, intimate, Sienna explained, trying to help Isla understand. Okay, Isla said, skipping into the shop. What is this? Isla gasped as she picked up a thong and put it over her head. Sienna turned around just in time to see what Isla was doing. No. These are like the pants I gave you the other day, but smaller, Sienna said, removing the thong from Isla's head and earning disapproving looks from other shoppers. Humans and their curiosity, Sienna thought, shaking her head before adding a few items to her basket for Isla. Sienna, please, may we go back? I'm so tired now. I miss Aiden, Isla pouted. Sienna flicked her cheek and rolled her eyes. Kit, you're a grown woman, not a baby. Stop pouting, she laughed. How old are you anyway? Sienna asked. 18. Wow, you're so young. Why did you run away? Sienna asked as they paid and left the store. My family wanted me to be someone I wasn't. I kept disappointing them by being who I really am. They would never have accepted Aiden as my mate, Isla said, a frown spreading across her face as memories rushed back. Kit, that's awful. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize a mermaid's life could be so hard, Sienna whispered. Isla didn't even mention the worst parts. Let's not talk about sad things on what has been a lovely day, Isla chirped, linking her arm with Sienna's. Isla remained so positive, despite the things she was hiding. Sienna knew about her tale but didn't know the darker parts of her story. They quickly returned to the pack house, where Aiden was sitting on the steps, waiting for them. Chapter 13. As the car came to a stop, Isla jumped out and ran to Aiden, leaping into his arms. Aiden laughed and hugged her tightly. Oi, lovebirds. Care to give me a hand? Sienna called, unimpressed. You get some good stuff? Aiden asked, lifting Isla effortlessly from the ground. Yes, but it's a lot. I can return some things, Isla said, feeling guilty, despite Sienna insisting that Aiden could afford it. No, it's fine. I'm glad you went shopping with Sienna. I expected even more, Aiden laughed, easing Isla's nerves. She sighed in relief before running over to Sienna to help with the shopping bags. What's this? Aiden asked, pulling out the bag from the lingerie store. Nothing, Sienna made me get them, Isla said quickly, snatching the bag from Aiden and hiding it behind her back, her face turning bright red. Aiden exchanged glances with Sienna before smirking and nodding. Okay, kitten, he laughed. Oh, so putting them on your head wasn't embarrassing, but now that they're in a bag, you turn redder than a strawberry, Sienna remarked. You put pants on your head? Aiden asked, pulling his head from the car to look at Isla, who shot Sienna a scowl. For fun, she said innocently. Aiden nodded and began helping with the bags. They continued laughing and joking as they unpacked Isla's new clothes, deliberately hiding the lingerie bag behind her bed for her to unpack later. Aiden couldn't help but laugh at the redness of Isla's face. Shut up, Isla mumbled, tossing some clothes into the drawer. Aiden snickered. Didn't say anything. Isla growled. You were thinking it, she said, pointing at him. After more teasing and 2 hours later, they finished. Sienna excused herself to make a phone call. Aiden, can I ask you for something? Isla asked, her big blue eyes looking up at him. Anything, he said, resting on her bed. Isla smiled sheepishly as she sat next to him. Can we go for a walk tonight? Yeah, of course, Aiden smiled, pulling her closer. A few hours later, they set off for their walk. Isla had changed into light gray flared trousers, a white vest top, and white shoes, and she braided her hair. They walked to the far end of the pack grounds, into the forest. Aiden was so focused on Isla that he didn't notice eyes were watching them. Aiden, please can I see your wolf? Isla asked shyly. Of course, but why? Aiden asked. He's so beautiful, and I've never seen a wolf like him, she said, feeling shy. Okay. Give me a moment, Aiden said, ducking behind a tree to strip off his clothes. Moments later, he emerged in his wolf form. Isla grinned and walked up to him, offering her hands. Aiden, in his wolf form, knelt down and Isla leaped onto his back. Run, she whispered into his ear, making his body shudder. Her voice still had that same effect on him. Following her request, he dashed through the woods with Isla laughing and holding on tight. Her laughter was innocent, almost like a child's, as they raced through the trees. Aiden. I love you, Isla whispered. Despite the wind blowing and twigs snapping underfoot, Aeron heard her and halted. Isla slid off his back and walked around to face him. She placed a hand on his wolf face and gently stroked it. I mean it. Aeron, I love you so much, she repeated, her smile soft and loving. Aeron shifted into his human form and stood tall, his presence full of strength. Isla gazed into his eyes, her smile growing even brighter. I love you too, Isla, Aeron responded, his hand gently cupping her cheek. He then pulled her close and kissed her. As their kiss deepened, Isla realized he was naked, which made her face flush with embarrassment. She coughed and quickly turned away, feeling shy. It's okay, kitten, Aeron chuckled. Let's head back. It's getting late, and you need to rest for tomorrow. Aeron shifted back into his wolf form. Isla climbed onto his back again, and they retraced their steps to where they had left his clothes. Aeron shifted again behind a tree, got dressed, and then led Isla back to her room. The next morning came faster than Isla had expected. She woke up in the bath and stretched, hearing shouting from the door. She had fallen asleep in the bath in her mermaid form, feeling a bit disconnected from her mermaid side. As her eyes adjusted, she flinched when the door suddenly opened. Quickly, she grabbed a towel and tried to cover herself before the intruder could notice. What on earth are you doing? Lydia shouted, causing Isla to let out a sigh of relief. I was having a bath nap, she said innocently. Today's the day. We have strict schedules. You're not allowed to see Aeron until the ceremony at 3 p.m. Breakfast will be fruit salad, and Kelly will bring it in 4 minutes. You need to hurry up and get out of the bath, Lydia said, tapping her watch. Isla climbed out of the bath and splashed water onto Lydia, who did not seem pleased. Isla, Lydia groaned, wiping bubbles from her face. Oops, sorry. Here, I can dry you off, Isla said, raising her hand to use her powers. A second later, Lydia flicked her hair over her shoulder and smiled. Where were you when I slipped in a puddle at the ball last year? Lydia laughed. Probably at home, Isla replied, not catching the sarcasm. Okay, dry off and get dressed, Lydia said, leaving the bathroom. Isla quickly dried herself and walked into her room, looking through her wardrobe for something to wear. She slipped on a white loose top with matching shorts. A knock came at her door, and Isla sat down, starting to braid her hair. Come in, she called. Lydia entered with a tray of breakfast. Oh Kelly, thank you so much, Isla said, walking over to the table as Kelly placed the tray down. No problem at all, Luna. It's a pleasure to bring you your ceremony breakfast, Kelly said, patting Isla's cheek. Kelly, can you explain why these ceremonies are so important? I feel like I'm a mouse surrounded by wolves, Isla laughed, taking Kelly's hand. Kelly patted her hand and pulled out a chair for Isla to sit. I almost forgot you were human. Take a seat, dear. You see, the moon goddess, who created all light creatures including us werewolves, gave us a special gift, soulmates. It means there's one person in the world designed for each wolf. No matter the hardships, this person can complete the other. It's like two pieces of a puzzle, you need each other. For an alpha, finding a Luna is crucial. Lunas are incredibly important. While the alpha makes the big decisions, the Luna helps in making those decisions and often provides wisdom. The Luna is like a mother to the whole pack. It's a big responsibility, but I know you're perfect for it. Kelly wrapped her arm around Isla and kissed her head. Are you sure? I want to be a good Luna, a good mother, and the best mate for Aeron. He deserves it, Isla said, taking a bite of the yogurt on her plate. You already are a great Luna and mate. You will be a great mother, Kelly reassured her. Isla glanced up at Kelly. What about the ceremony? It's important because it announces the new Luna and lets the pack wish good fortune for the couple. It's a special time when packs come together, and mates can unite. It's a wonderful tradition. Aeron smiled to himself, overhearing their conversation. He didn't want to intrude, but since he couldn't see her today, he wanted to make sure she was okay. Chapter 14. At that moment, Lydia rushed in. Okay, Kelly, that's perfect. Please go help Dawn with the flower arrangements. Kelly gave Isla one last reassuring squeeze before excusing herself. Eat up, young lady, Lydia said, taking a strawberry from Isla's plate. I'm so nervous, Lydia, Isla admitted. After hearing Kelly's explanation, Isla realized just how out of her element she was. You can do this, Isla. You'll be fine, Lydia said with a reassuring smile, taking another strawberry. If you say so, but something tells me something's going to go wrong, Isla said, looking down at her plate. Nothing will go wrong. We've all waited for this day for so long. The preparations started when Aeron was in his mother's belly, Lydia laughed, plopping herself onto the bed. Lydia's confidence made Isla feel a little more reassured. Isla finally managed to focus on her breakfast, but Lydia kept helping herself to the food. Okay, breakfast, check. Now it's time for the bath, which will take a while, Lydia laughed. Isla stuck her tongue out at Lydia, who returned the gesture and ushered her into the bathroom. Isla filled the bath with water and lavender bath salts, her favorite human indulgence. When her tail formed, she admired it. She had a white tail with purple and blue scales, unlike any other mermaid in her family or history. Lydia walked in and sat on the toilet lid. I'll never get used to seeing that, Lydia laughed. Can I touch it? She asked. Isla nodded, and Lydia ran her hands over the tail. Wow, it feels like a fish, Lydia said, pulling her hand back. Isla gave her a look. Yeah, shut up, Lydia said, leaning back and crossing her legs. They chatted and laughed while Isla washed herself. Afterward, Isla put on a white robe. Now what? It's only 11 a.m., and I still have 4 hours, Isla said, flopping onto the bed. That's not much time. Lydia panicked, looking at her watch. It's plenty. I need some fresh air, Isla said sweetly. Lydia glanced at her watch, then back at Isla, who gave her the puppy dog eyes. Sighing, Lydia said, Fine. 5 minutes. I'll ask everyone to stay away from the garden, especially Aeron. Isla slipped on her shoes, and they walked downstairs into the garden. Isla took a deep breath, inhaling the fresh air. The garden looks beautiful, she said, bending down to smell one of the roses. No, the flowers aren't as lively as they were yesterday, Lydia said, starting to panic. Everything has to be flawless, Lydia said, pacing nervously. Isla rolled her eyes and gently placed her hand on the ground, closing her eyes. Magic swirled through her, flowing from her hand into the earth, making the flowers glow and regain their vibrancy. Oh my God, Lydia gasped, her mouth hanging open. Come on, let's get ready, Isla said, pushing Lydia's mouth shut and walking past her. What else can you do? Lydia asked, hurrying to catch up, but Isla just ignored the question. They went up to Isla's room where Kelly and the other Omega women were waiting. Hi ladies. How can I help? Isla asked. Isla, they're here to help you get ready, Lydia said, laughing as she gently pushed Isla toward them. There was a chair in the center of the room, and a trolley filled with hair and makeup supplies. Oh, this looks nice, but it seems like too much. I don't need all this, can I just do it my way? Isla asked. Isla, you can, but don't you want help? Lydia replied. No. I want to get ready with my best friend and play some music, Isla said, linking her arm with Lydia's. Oh, you sappy girl, Lydia teased. All right, ladies, you heard her. You can do a quick once-over with the preparations, but the rest of the time is yours to do as you wish, Lydia said, with a wink. Thank you, Luna. They all bowed and exited the room. Let's paint your nails, Lydia said, grabbing Isla's hand. White, to match your dress, she added, going over to the makeup kit the girls had left behind. She opened a compartment filled with every color imaginable and pulled out a white shade. Sit down, she said as she began painting Isla's nails. Don't move yet. Lydia almost shouted as Isla reached for a cucumber stick. Isla froze, pulling her hand back to the chair. After her nails dried, Lydia pulled out Isla's dress and smoothed it out. Glancing at the clock, she saw it was 1:30 p.m., with just an hour and a half left. Okay, time for makeup. Lydia squealed. Isla, still learning how to do her makeup, allowed Lydia to help her. Lydia applied soft glam makeup to Isla and kept her own look light and natural. All right, we have 30 minutes. I'm going to quickly slip into my dress, and while I'm doing that, you can get into your underwear, and I'll help you into your dress when I get back. Lydia said, rushing out of the room. Isla grabbed the lingerie bag she had set aside. It was a thong, and she'd never worn one before. She tried it on but didn't like the fit. No thank you, she muttered to herself before pulling it off and tossing it back into the bag. She tried on a bra instead, which Lydia had helped her choose and properly fit. This one was strapless, and although different from the others, Isla managed to put it on. She then grabbed her dress hanging from the wall. It was a tight satin white dress with a cowl neck, backless with a small strap that tied loosely across her back. It fit her perfectly. After she slipped it on, she admired herself in the mirror just as the door opened. Lydia entered and gasped. "Oh Kit, you look stunning," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. Isla walked over and grabbed Lydia's forearm, and Lydia took her hand in return. "You look beautiful too." "Like a princess," Isla said, stepping back to admire her best friend. Lydia was wearing a fitted plum-colored dress with a high neck that complemented her dark hair. She had already curled her hair, and she had also done Isla's hair, which was styled with 2 braids on the side, tied in the back, with the rest of her hair cascading in curls down to her waist. "Okay, finishing touches," Lydia squealed as she applied red matte lipstick to Isla's lips. The bold red contrasted beautifully with the white dress. "All right, picture time." Just then, an alarm went off on Lydia's phone, and Isla's stomach twisted with nerves. "It's time," Lydia said, squeezing Isla's hands. They walked downstairs, and as they stepped outside, everyone was gathered in the garden. The scene looked like a wedding, minus the officiant. As Isla entered the garden, all eyes turned to her, followed by gasps and murmurs, which made her blush. At the end of the aisle, Aeron stood with the pack elders, beaming with pride. Isla's eyes met his, and suddenly, all her anxiety vanished. Lydia took a seat, and Aeron walked over to take her hand and lead her to the front. But before Aeron could reach her, someone approached Isla from behind, surprising everyone. "Did you miss me?" Kaylin whispered in her ear. Chapter 15. Kaylin wrapped one arm around her waist, the other around her neck, with a knife pressed to her throat. The pack members stood up, snarling. Aeron took a step forward, baring his fangs in an attempt to intimidate Kaylin. "Don't even think about it, dog. Take a step closer, and I'll slit her throat," Kaylin growled. "Use your powers on me, and I'll kill your little pet," he threatened, before sniffing Isla's hair. The sensation made her shudder, while Aeron seethed with anger. Aeron froze as Kaylin suddenly picked Isla up and threw her over his shoulder, running off through the woods. As the ocean came into sight, Isla struggled against Kaylin's hold. Just before they reached the shallows, he tossed her to the ground as if she were weightless. "You bitch. You couldn't just follow orders," Kaylin growled as Isla tried to crawl away. He towered over her, but by then Aeron, Lydia, and the pack had already reached the beach. When Kaylin saw them, he yanked Isla to her feet and pressed the knife to her neck again. "Let her go," Aeron roared. "She belongs to me," Kaylin snarled. "She is my mate." "She belongs to no one," Aeron replied, stepping closer as Kaylin backed up toward the waves. One more step, and Isla would grow a tail. Kaylin didn't react with surprise but merely laughed, his anger showing through. "Clearly, she hasn't told you," he said. Guilt flooded Isla. She should have told him sooner. Aeron's eyes searched hers as she lowered her gaze. "Tell me what?" "She's my fiancée." Aeron's brow furrowed as he looked at Isla, searching for the truth. "That's not true," Aeron said, hurt. "Kit, tell me it isn't true," he asked, his eyes pleading. "It's true," Isla replied, tears welling up in her eyes. Aeron looked down at his feet, feeling betrayed. "She's not as perfect as you thought," Kaylin taunted, tightening his hold on her. Isla struggled, causing Kaylin to push the knife against her neck, drawing blood. She winced in pain, and Aeron roared, shaking the air with his power. The pack fell to their knees, but Kaylin and Isla remained unaffected. Aeron barely had time to react before Kaylin moved Isla closer to the water. "Please, Kaylin, don't do this," Isla begged, glancing at the water, now only inches from her feet. "You belong to me," Kaylin seethed. In a flash, his knife slashed through her dress and bra before he tossed her into the water. Aeron stepped forward, halting when Isla grew a tail. He held up the torn fabric in his hands and threw it to the ground. Lydia stared at Aeron, who was frozen in place, eyes locked on Isla. Terrified, Isla wrapped her arms around her bare chest, feeling exposed and vulnerable. "Aeron," she cried, but Kaylin merely rolled his eyes. "She's mine. Her brother gave her to me, and she'll be my wife. You dog mean nothing to us." Aeron stood frozen, unable to move. "Don't think for a second that I'll have mercy on you. You'll pay for this," Kaylin spat at Isla before tearing off the shirt he had stolen earlier, wading into the water, and grabbing Isla by the arm, dragging her deeper into the ocean until she vanished from sight. "Aeron, she's your mate. What are you doing?" Lydia growled, fury in her voice. Finally, Aeron snapped out of his trance, but it was too late. Isla was gone, and he could do nothing to follow her. His mate, a mermaid, was now lost to him. Chapter 16. "Caelan, please. That was my mate, let me go." Isla begged as Caelan gripped her arm tightly. "No, I'm your mate. That dog can't be your mate. I'm taking you back to the castle where your brother and our new king will set you straight," Caelan said, pulling her closer. Suddenly, it dawned on her, she had been gone for weeks. Thaddeus was the new king. She had missed his coronation. As the city of Atlantica came into view, she stopped struggling. Merfolk recognized her return and began cheering for Caelan, calling him a hero for rescuing the princess. Caelan dragged Isla into the throne room, where Thaddeus was talking with Alfie. Thaddeus looked up and saw his sister standing in the doorway, her arm crossed over her chest, trying to cover herself. "Kit," Thaddeus exclaimed, rushing over to her. She looked broken. Caelan let go of her arm and bowed to the king. Thaddeus embraced Isla, but noticed her discomfort. "Alfie, please go get Mabel to help Princess Isla back to her room while I talk to Caelan," Thaddeus ordered. Alfie nodded and hurried out. "Kit, look at me," Thaddeus said, but Isla kept her gaze downward. When she looked up, Thaddeus's heart sank. He placed his finger under her chin, lifting her head, but Isla pulled away and wrapped her arm tighter around herself, trying to preserve her dignity. Mabel entered and gently guided Isla to her room, where she collapsed on the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. Mabel tried to comfort her by stroking her back, but Isla was too upset. All she wanted was Aeron, but she feared he hated her for lying to him. "Caelan, thank you for finding my sister. Where did you find her?" Thaddeus asked. Caelan bowed again. "On land." Thaddeus's eyes widened. "On land?" he asked, surprised. "Yes, your majesty. Werewolves had kidnapped her and were forcing her into a marriage with one of them. I managed to stop it before anything worse happened." "She didn't seem eager to leave though," Caelan lied, trying to cover his actions. "Thank you again," Thaddeus said, turning away from Caelan. "I think we should postpone the wedding." "With all due respect, your majesty, I believe it would be better to move the wedding up, perhaps this weekend. She needs stability to cope with this horrible ordeal," Caelan suggested. "I suppose you're right," Thaddeus agreed, though he didn't sound entirely sure. He felt compelled to support the merman who had saved his sister. Just then, Evelina and Corwin rushed into the room. "Thaddeus, someone said they saw Isla. Is it true?" Evelina asked, looking at Caelan. "Yes, mother. Caelan saved her from the werewolves," Thaddeus replied, patting Caelan on the back. Evelina immediately hugged Caelan, thanking him for bringing her daughter home. "Mother, please give her time before seeing her. She's in a fragile state," Thaddeus warned. Evelina nodded but ignored her son's advice, rushing to Isla's room. Inside, she found her daughter crying with Meg standing nearby. Mabel excused herself and left the room. "Kit," Evelina whispered, tapping her daughter's shoulder. When Isla saw it was her mother, she rushed into her arms. "Mother, I've missed you so much," Isla sobbed, wiping her eyes. Evelina pulled a necklace from her pocket and helped Isla put it on to cover herself. She then retrieved the tiara Isla had left on the bed and placed it gently on her head. The tiara felt heavier than ever before. "I've missed you too." "I'm so glad you're safe," Evelina said, but Isla furrowed her brow. "What do you mean, mother?" Isla asked, confused. "Caelan told Thaddeus you were taken by wolves and forced to marry one of them," Evelina explained, disgust evident in her voice. "No, mother. I was happy there. I ran away on purpose. Caelan is awful, he's been threatening me. I left, and I found my mate. He's an alpha." "He's sweet and kind," Isla gushed, her face lighting up at the thought of Aeron. "Caelan kidnapped me from there and threatened to kill my mate if I didn't go with him," Isla continued, clutching her mother's arms. "That can't be true. I don't believe it." "Caelan is a good boy," Evelina said, as though trying to convince herself. "I'm not lying, mother." "And now you're all condemning me to a life of misery and abuse," Isla said, pulling away from her mother and turning her back. Evelina left the room, Isla's words ringing in her ears. She didn't want to believe that Kaelin could be lying, but she knew Thaddeus wouldn't listen. She had to try. Evelina stormed into the throne room where Thaddeus was discussing wedding plans. "Thaddeus, I've always respected your decisions, but this one I can't support," she said, swimming closer to him. "Isla says she left willingly, that she found her mate on land. She said Kaelin threatened her and that's why she left. I don't want my daughter to live a life of unhappiness. Please, don't make her marry him." Thaddeus's expression hardened. "Mother, as your son, I've listened to your concerns. But as your king, I must do what's best for my kingdom and my family. There's no proof to back this up. Kaelin is an honorable warrior, and I won't let the words of a rebellious teenager sway me." "Then, for the first time in my life, I am ashamed to be your mother," Evelina spat before storming out of the room. Thaddeus, though a good man and king, was too set in his ways, clinging to outdated rules. Isla needed freedom, and Thaddeus needed a reality check. Chapter 17. The day of the wedding arrived. Since Isla had been brought back, she had stayed locked in her room. She barely ate and didn't speak to anyone. "Your Majesty," Mabel greeted. Thaddeus turned around, smiling. "Mabel, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be helping the bride get ready?" "I need you to come to her room. I think something is wrong with her," Mabel warned. Thaddeus nodded and followed her to Isla's room. Mabel stayed outside while Thaddeus entered, noticing the heavy atmosphere. He looked over at Isla and saw that her eyes were sunken, and her skin was turning a pale gray. This was something he had never witnessed before. "Kit," he called, moving closer to her. She was so weak she could barely lift her head. She was already dressed in her wedding gown, with pearls adorning her neck, chest, wrists, and ears. She looked like a ghost bride. His hand gently touched her cheek. "Isla," he said again, but she slowly closed her eyes. He nudged her, but she didn't respond. "Mabel." Thaddeus shouted as he lifted Isla into his arms and swam out of the room. Mabel quickly rushed to Isla and placed her hand on Isla's forehead. "Let's take her to the elders," Thaddeus said urgently. Thaddeus swam quickly to the room where the elders usually gathered. They quickly jumped to their feet and bowed to the king, then noticed Isla. "Your Majesty, what is wrong?" they asked, moving closer to check on Isla. "Please, I don't know what's wrong," Thaddeus said, his voice filled with concern. Just then, Evelina and Corwin rushed into the room after hearing about the situation from one of the guards. "We heard what happened. Is she all right?" Corwin asked, rushing over to check on his daughter. "I don't know," Thaddeus said, still confused. He looked down at Isla, feeling lost. He had never seen anyone this sick before. "I think it's her mate," Evelina exclaimed. Thaddeus looked up at his mother in disbelief. "What?" the elders asked. "She's mated to a werewolf," Evelina explained. The elders exchanged concerned glances before looking back at Thaddeus. "Your Majesty, if this is true, she has been away from her mate for far too long. She's dying," they warned. At that moment, Thaddeus realized what he needed to do. "I have to take her to land," he said. He quickly rushed out of the castle and swam toward the surface. Although he was the king, he had never been ashore before. As he reached the surface, he took a deep breath, his first. He glanced down at Isla, still unconscious in his arms, and began swimming toward the shore. Knowing this would happen, I placed the idea in Sienna's mind to encourage Aeron to go to the beach. He was too lost in despair to realize he needed to be there. Aeron had been lonely, weak and depressed, causing Isla's own weakness. They had been separated for too long. Sienna thought it would be good for him to get some fresh air and take a break from the pack. Everyone was down, losing their Luna, and their alpha was also in pain. Thaddeus sat on the shore for a moment, holding Isla close and gently rocking her. He prayed for a miracle as Sienna and Aeron approached the beach. "Aeron, look!" Sienna shouted. Aeron slowly raised his head, and his eyes fell on Thaddeus standing deep in the water, holding something. With a bit of help from me, Aeron found the strength to run over. Sienna followed quickly behind him. Aeron rushed into the water without hesitation, determined to reach Thaddeus. Aeron's point of view. Sienna had been making me walk with her to the beach, but I didn't want to. I missed my mate. She had been taken by someone, her fiancé. I couldn't believe she was a mermaid, that she was engaged, and that I hadn't done more to save her. As we walked onto the beach, Sienna nudged my arm and told me to look at the water. I did, and I saw a shadow. A glimmer of hope returned to my chest. I sprinted toward the water, stopping as I saw Isla in a merman's arms. He looked like Isla, only older. I looked down at my mate, and my wolf howled inside me. She was unconscious and looked terribly pale. I listened closely, hearing her faint heartbeat. Despite her pale complexion, she still looked beautiful, adorned with a pearl necklace across her chest. She wore white netting that had pearls tied across it. She was still breathtaking. Chapter 18. Moon Goddess Point of View. When Aeron and Sienna walked along the beach, he sensed Isla's presence and looked up from the sand. He rushed into the water, Sienna following close behind. He stopped in front of Thaddeus, noticing the crown on his head. He nodded in acknowledgement, and Thaddeus mirrored his gesture. Aeron then gazed down at his mate, who was pale and sick. He had seen this sickness before, and he knew what it meant. She was sick because of the distance between them. That's how the mate bond worked. If you loved someone deeply, being apart would make you sick. The stronger the love, the stronger the effect. Aeron's heart ached seeing her like this. He lifted his hands from the water, ignoring the shake in them. He gently placed one hand on her arm and the other on her cheek. He leaned down and kissed her softly on the cheek. As if by magic, the grayness faded from her cheeks, and her eyes fluttered open. "Mate," she whispered, reaching out her hand toward Aeron. He kissed her hand and then held it against his neck, laughing with relief. "I'm sorry, Kit," Thaddeus whispered, looking down at his sister. Isla wrapped her arms around him. "Thank you, my brother and king." She pulled away from Thaddeus and turned to Aeron, who pulled her into a hug. When she pulled back, she looked into his eyes and smiled. "Forgive me," she pleaded. He nodded, leaning down to kiss her lips. Isla pulled back and turned to Thaddeus. "Thaddeus, this is Aeron. My mate," she confirmed, as if it needed saying. Thaddeus extended his hand to Aeron for a handshake as Isla moved to hug Sienna. Thaddeus looked past his sister toward the shore, where many people were waiting, kneeling in anticipation for the return of their Luna. Now he understood where she truly belonged. "Take care of her," Thaddeus said firmly to Aeron, who nodded. "I will," Aeron said. "You better, or I'll come ashore too," Thaddeus warned, turning toward his sister. "I'll miss you, little sister." "You'll still see me, brother." "I promise," Isla said. Thaddeus smiled, waved his hands over Isla, and her tail disappeared, transforming into legs. "Oh my goddess. Thank you so much, brother," Isla cried, her eyes wide with amazement. She looked up at Aeron, and he smiled down at her. Thaddeus bent down into the water and picked up a shell. With a wave of his hand, the shell began to glow, transforming into a necklace. He placed the necklace around her neck. "Whenever you wear this and wish for your tail, it will appear. Your powers will remain in your human form should you ever need them," he said. Isla nodded, tears filling her eyes as she held onto Aeron tightly. Moments later, Evelina, Corwin, and every mermaid and merman Isla had ever known surfaced from the water, along with every sea creature she had befriended. They came to bid her farewell. Aeron and Sienna's eyes widened in awe as they looked at the gathering. "Princess Isla, you will be missed," Thaddeus said, finally letting go. Isla happily nodded and took Aeron's hand. After a brief moment of silence, the merfolk returned to their previous spot, and Isla turned to Aeron, leaping up and pushing him underwater. As he surfaced, both of them began laughing, and they kissed again. "Isla," she called, hurrying over to Sienna, who eagerly hugged her back. Sienna then leaned in and whispered in Isla's ear, mentioning that from the waist down, she was not wearing anything, making Isla blush. Since they were waist-deep in the water, it wasn't noticed. She quickly pulled Sienna in front of her, making Aeron raise an eyebrow. "What?" he asked. "I don't have any pants," she whispered, feeling embarrassed. Aeron laughed and nodded. "I'll go get you something." He then walked away, leaving Isla and Sienna behind. Using her necklace, Isla transformed back into her mermaid form. She was still dressed in her wedding outfit, which consisted of a piece of cloth covering her chest and left shoulder, adorned with strings of pearls and shells. Her crown was still in place. While waiting for Aeron, she swam circles around Sienna, splashing her with water from her tail. "You could have told me you were a princess," Sienna chuckled, trying to playfully hit Isla, who dodged it. "Hey, I don't remember you asking," Isla giggled in return. A few minutes later, Aeron came back with a dress, and Isla took it from him. Turning her back, she removed the old wedding top and handed it to Sienna as she changed into her human form and slipped on the dress. She walked out of the water to join Aeron, and as she passed, Sienna returned the top. Isla held it in front of her, running her fingers over the shells, sighing as she turned around and tossed it back into the ocean. She then took Aeron's hand and walked toward the pack house, where everyone was waiting. Upon seeing her, the pack erupted in applause, and the children she used to sing to rushed over. Isla crouched down, embracing them as they tumbled over her. She was finally home. You might have thought that Aeron and Isla's story was over, but in truth, it had only just begun. They were able to go ahead with the Luna ceremony, and Isla was officially named the Luna. At last, the whole pack knew Isla was a mermaid, and they loved her even more. Despite King Thaddeus's blessing for their union, someone still had unfinished business. After bidding his sister farewell, Thaddeus returned home, where the preparations were quickly undone. Caelin, who had missed the news, rushed in and asked, "What's going on? Where is Isla?" He hurried over to King Thaddeus. "She's with her mate." "On land," Thaddeus growled, suddenly recalling everything his mother and sister had warned him about Caelin Koa. Caelin's face turned red with anger. "What? She's my mate." "You promised she'd be my wife," he shouted, stepping up to Thaddeus, who wasn't the least bit impressed. "Shut your mouth, you little worm. I know what you did to my sister. Others may have been fooled, but not anymore. Leave my presence now before you cross a line that you can't come back from," Thaddeus roared. Caelin, huffing with rage, stormed out of the castle and made his way toward the land. "Isla, you will be mine," Caelin muttered to himself, heading to the surface. Meanwhile, Isla and Aeron were settling happily into their new roles. The day Isla returned to land, they completed the Luna ceremony, followed by a packed dinner in the garden. Aeron sat in a chair, and Isla climbed onto his lap, feeding him from her plate. "So Kit, what powers do you have?" Aeron asked, and as soon as the others nearby heard the question, they all turned their attention to her. Isla looked around at the curious faces, then glanced back at Aeron and laughed. "Well, I've been blessed with many gifts. I have control over all the elements," she said, popping a grape into her mouth. The crowd murmured in awe. Using her finger, she waved it over a flower from the rose bush beside them. Without touching it, the flower floated in the air and gently landed in the hands of a little girl, who gasped in excitement. "Thank you, Luna," the little girl squealed, holding the flower up to her nose before running off to share the story with her mother, making the other pack members smile. Aeron smiled and kissed Isla on the cheek before grabbing some cheese from her plate. They were incredibly happy. As the night came to a close, everyone gathered around a bonfire, and some of the pack members picked up instruments. "Luna, will you sing?" one of the pack mothers asked as her child bounced excitedly. The others joined in, chanting, "Yes please Luna." Isla looked over at Aeron, who raised his eyebrows and shrugged. She thought for a moment before nodding, licking the strawberry juice from her hand. She sat up straighter on Aeron's lap, considering what song to sing. After a brief thought, she remembered a song that she liked and felt it was perfect for the moment. She began to sing. "Something in your eyes makes me want to lose myself. Makes me want to lose myself in your arms. There is something in your voice. Makes my heart beat fast. Hope this feeling lasts the rest of my life. If you knew how lonely my life has been, and how low I've felt so long. If you knew how I wanted someone to come along and change my life the way you've done. Feels like home to me. Feels like home to me. Feels like I'm heading back to the place where I should be." A glass breaks on a long dark road, and a loud siren cries over my head. "But I'm okay, because you're here with me. And I can almost see a light shining through the dark. If you knew how much this time means to me, and how long I have been waiting for you to touch me. If you knew how happy you are making me. I never believed I could love someone this much. Feels like home to me, feels like home to me. Feels like I'm finally back to where I started. Feels like home to me. Feels like home to me. Feels like I'm right back to where I belong. Feels like I'm right back to where I belong." After she stopped singing, she melted into Aeron's arms and gave him a kiss. Everyone had been soothed by her singing. Beautiful, Aeron whispered while holding her tightly. Everything felt just right. All right, everyone. It's late. Time for bed, Isla said as she got up from my lap and stretched her arms out wide. Chapter 20. Everyone listened to their Luna and slowly made their way back to their rooms. As Isla was about to head to her room, Aeron gently grabbed her hand, stood up from his chair, and leaned down to whisper in her ear. Come with me, he said, tugging her along and leading her into the woods behind the pack house. Where are we going, Aeron? Isla asked, carefully stepping over a fallen tree and nearly tripping as she tried to keep up with him. It's a surprise, Aeron grinned. Within minutes, they arrived at a small clearing where a house stood quietly. I didn't know this was here, Isla gasped, leaning against Aeron. He smiled down at her before looking back at the house. It's for us, he whispered, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Isla squealed happily, grabbing his hand and pulling him excitedly toward the house. I thought we were supposed to stay at the pack house, Isla said as they neared the door. Aeron pulled a key from his pocket and handed it to her, while she jumped up and down like a little kid. Well, we need a place for some quiet time, don't we? Aeron chuckled, motioning for her to unlock the door. Isla laughed and opened the door, her face lighting up with joy. Aeron, it's beautiful. I love it, she beamed, turning to hug him as he followed her inside. I had Lydia put some clothes in the wardrobe for you and stock the kitchen with food, so we can spend a few days here just the two of us, Aeron said. It's perfect, Isla said again before reaching up and giving Aeron a sweet kiss. You hungry? Aeron asked, taking off his jacket. Not really, but could I have a hot chocolate? Isla asked, giving him a puppy dog look. Of course, Aeron said, heading toward the kitchen. I'm just going to change into my pajamas. Isla called out as she ran up the stairs. She stepped into the bedroom, admiring the cozy space before snapping herself back into action. She opened the drawers and found a few cute nightclothes Lydia had left for her. She wasn't a big fan of the tiny ones, but she smiled when she found a soft lace nightdress that covered just enough. She grabbed it and went to the bathroom, freshened up, and slipped it on. After spraying some sweet-smelling perfume on her neck and wrists, she brushed out her hair, letting it fall in soft waves down her back. Isla, are you coming down for your hot chocolate? Aeron called from below, pulling her from her thoughts. Could you bring it up to me? Isla asked in a playful voice. Aeron laughed and started up the stairs. As Aeron got closer, Isla felt her heart race. Kit, are you okay? I could hear your heartbeat all the way downstairs, Aeron said as he pushed open the door, balancing the mug carefully. When Isla didn't answer right away, he looked up and saw her standing there shyly waiting for him. His eyes widened, and he quickly set the cup down on the dresser. Wow, you look amazing, he said, walking toward her. She smiled and blushed. You need to mark me, don't you? I'm ready, Isla said, tilting her head slightly to the side, giving him full access. Aeron looked at her neck, then back into her eyes. Are you sure? He asked gently, placing a hand on the side of her neck. She nodded and tilted her head even more. His fangs grew, and he softly bit into her neck. It stung a little at first but then turned into a warm tingling feeling that made her sigh happily. Aeron then gently licked her neck and placed tiny kisses along it up to her lips. Their kiss was slow and full of feeling, lasting for a while before Isla pulled back, smiling mischievously. She gently pushed Aeron onto the bed and climbed onto his lap. She kissed him again, full of excitement and love, then leaned in close to his neck. Aeron watched in awe as she revealed her own small fangs. She bit into his neck to mark him, and though he flinched at the first sting, it quickly melted into something wonderful. After she finished, Aeron smiled, picked her up, and gently spun her onto the bed so she lay beneath him. Aeron, I'm a little scared. I've never done anything like this before, Isla admitted, placing a hand on her chest. Aeron smiled warmly. Me either, he said softly. Isla felt her heart flutter, realizing that they had saved themselves for each other. She shyly lifted her nightdress over her head, blushing as Aeron watched her with so much love in his eyes. You're perfect, he said simply. She crawled toward him at the edge of the bed, helping him pull off his shirt. He lifted it over his head while Isla stayed close. She reached for his belt, undoing it carefully, and he helped by stepping out of his trousers and boxers. He climbed onto the bed, pulling her gently up higher onto the pillows. Aeron kissed her softly, moving from her lips down to her neck and across her shoulders. He cupped her side and pressed his forehead against hers, sharing her warmth. He showered her with kisses, making Isla giggle and sigh happily. He moved gently, cherishing every part of her, being slow and careful. Isla's heart swelled with joy and love as they shared a special private moment together. Aeron held her close, brushing hair from her face and kissing her forehead. "You're my everything," he whispered. "You too," Isla whispered back, snuggling against him as they stayed wrapped up in each other's arms, safe and happy. "This might hurt, sweetheart. Tell me if you want me to stop," he said gently before slowly sliding into her warmth. She wiggled a little, feeling the pressure inside her. She winced, making Aeron freeze. "Should I stop?" he asked, seeing her squint her eyes. "No," she said with a smile. Aeron looked down and pushed in a little more. Isla groaned at the discomfort but soon started to feel better. Aeron moved carefully, giving her time to get used to him. "Faster," she whispered against his ear. Aeron listened and picked up his pace, moving quicker and quicker, making Isla moan loudly. She arched her back as Aeron matched her excitement. Isla became warmer and more relaxed, and Aeron slowed down when he reached his peak, letting out a big groan and resting his forehead next to hers while she clung tightly around him. As he caught his breath, Isla stroked his back and kissed his shoulder softly. After a little while, he carefully rolled to the side and gently slipped away from her. Then he got up, went to the bathroom, and grabbed a cloth. When he returned, he admired his mate, and she smiled sweetly at him. He cleaned her gently, noticing a tiny bit of blood but saying nothing, just being careful. "Come on, kitten. Let's take a shower," he said, lifting her from the bed. They both went to the bathroom and hopped into the shower. Isla squealed happily as the water rained down her body. She had never used a shower before and had always dreamed about dancing in the rain after seeing it in a movie. She stopped squealing when Aeron grabbed a cloth and started washing her back. She hummed softly, letting him continue. After he finished, he poured body wash into his hands, hugged her from behind, and gently washed over her shoulders and chest. Isla leaned back against him, feeling safe. When he was done, she turned around, took the cloth from him, and started washing him too. Even though they were quiet, everything they felt was already said. Chapter 21. After their first night together, Isla woke up and tried to roll over but felt something heavy on her stomach. "Good morning," Aeron said, eyes still closed. "Aeron, move your arm," Isla groaned, trying to push it off. Instead, he wrapped it tighter around her with a little grumble. "Really mature." "Aeron, hurry, I have to pee," Isla whined. Aeron sighed and moved his arm. He rolled onto his back and watched as Isla jumped up and raced to the bathroom. He chuckled softly, grabbed her pillow, and pressed it to his face to breathe in her sweet scent. After using the bathroom, Isla looked at herself in the mirror and smiled. She was so happy. She turned on the shower and hopped in. Hearing the water, Aeron jumped up and went to the bathroom. He leaned against the doorframe, watching Isla running shampoo through her hair. "Hey, where's my invitation?" he teased. Isla looked over her shoulder and rolled her eyes, turning her back to him. Aeron laughed and jumped in to join her. After a cheerful start to the morning, Isla got dressed and sat at the vanity desk. Aeron went downstairs to prepare breakfast. Isla wore a pink dress that stopped just above her knees, decorated with white flowers around the neckline and hem. Moments later, Aeron returned carrying a tray full of chopped fruits and a bowl of yogurt with 2 spoons. Hearing him come in, Isla turned and jumped up excitedly. "Aeron, you're the best," she said, grabbing a strawberry and popping it into her mouth before jumping onto the bed. "I know," he said proudly, climbing onto the bed with the tray. "What are we doing today?" "I thought we could take a short hike before heading back to the pack house. I have a couple of meetings later. Another alpha wants to talk with me," Aeron explained. "Ugh, boring." "The hike sounds fun though," Isla said. "You're like a hyper little kid," Aeron chuckled. "I prefer hyper mermaid, thank you very much," Isla giggled, stuffing more strawberries into her mouth. Aeron laughed and tossed a grape into the air, catching it with his mouth. "Wow. That's impressive," Isla clapped. Aeron bowed dramatically but then froze suddenly. Isla noticed his change and touched his arm. "Aeron, are you all right?" she asked. In an instant, Aeron snapped out of it, jumped up, and started pulling on clothes. "Lydia just mind-linked me." A witch showed up near the border with a warning. "They're coming for us before the next full moon," Aeron said urgently, handing Isla her jacket. Her eyes widened as she pulled it on. "We need to start training the pack. We've only fought rogues before, never anything like witches." "We're not ready," Aeron said, running his hand through his hair. They both raced back to the pack house where a crowd had already gathered, looking worried. When they saw Aeron, everyone rushed to him, shouting all at once. It was too much noise to understand anything. A loud whistle suddenly cut through the garden, making everyone turn. Isla was standing tall on the fountain. "Everyone, we know you're scared. Training starts immediately. They may have witches, but they don't have a mermaid. I may not be strong alone, but together we are," Isla shouted. The crowd relaxed and began listening to Aeron. "Your Luna is right," Aeron said. "One of us alone isn't enough, but all of us together can win this fight," he said, raising his hand. Cheers and nods spread through the group. "We don't know how many are coming, so I'll reach out to nearby packs for help," Aeron said loudly. He dismissed everyone and headed to his office, with Isla and Lydia close behind. Inside, he sighed. "Girls, give me a minute. I need to make some calls and call in some favors," he said, grabbing his phone. Lydia and Isla nodded and left the room. The next day, alphas from other packs arrived with their fighters. Training began right away and continued all day, every day. At night, the packs gathered in the gardens, telling stories of old battles. New alliances were formed, and new friendships grew stronger under the stars. Chapter 22. The day of the full moon came. Everyone in the pack gathered together and moved the little ones into the basement of the pack house. Isla used her magic to lock the basement safely before returning outside. The other packs didn't know that Isla had mermaid powers or that she was a mermaid at all. They thought she was just a human. "Aeron, don't you think it's time your mate went back to the basement with the kids?" Another alpha said, walking over to Aeron and Isla. The others looked at her too, thinking the same thing. Aeron really did want Isla to sit out the battle, but after some arguments, it was agreed that she would stay and fight beside her pack. "Why?" Aeron asked, putting his hand on Isla's back. "I mean no disrespect, Luna, but you're human. You won't be much help in this battle. You should take shelter and help with the kids," the alpha said, bowing a little. When he called Isla human, the pack couldn't help but laugh. Aeron smirked and shared a knowing look with Isla. "Do you want to tell him, or should I?" Isla asked, smiling sweetly at the confused alpha. "You can," Aeron chuckled. "Well, alpha, thank you for caring, but it's not needed. No offense to anyone here, but I am the strongest," Isla said, pulling her hair into a high ponytail. The alpha raised his brows like he was trying not to laugh. "I'm a royal mermaid," Isla said proudly. Alpha Roderick looked at the others, then burst out laughing like she had made a silly joke. Isla didn't like being laughed at. She stepped forward and used her magic to lift the alpha into the air, making everyone gasp. "Now, alpha, I didn't take you for someone who doesn't believe. I am mermaid royalty. I have powers you could never imagine," she said sweetly before letting him fall back down gently. "Believe me now?" she asked, holding out her hand to help him up. "Yes, Luna," the alpha chuckled, shaking her hand and nodding at Aeron. "You have a good one, Aeron," he said. Aeron stepped closer, wrapped an arm around Isla, and kissed her on the head. "Thank you, Alpha Roderick," he said kindly. "Now everyone, it's almost time," Aeron called out. "And my Luna, your Luna Queen, has something to say." The crowd went silent. Lydia came up behind Isla carrying a big brown bowl filled with blue paint. "Thank you, Aeron," Isla said. "Everyone, now you know I'm a mermaid. The moon goddess blessed me with special gifts. One of those gifts is magic, like witches have. I know you're scared about the war, and that's okay. I will help you all the best I can. One way I can help is with this paint. I'll charm it with my siren voice and share my strength with you," Isla said. She waved her hands over the bowl and closed her eyes, speaking in Latin. Everyone stayed very quiet, watching her. Isla opened her eyes again, dipped 2 fingers from each hand into the blue paint, and turned back to the crowd. She started singing. Song, "My Mother Told Me" by Naughty Dread. My mother told me. Someday I would buy galleys with good oars and sails to distant shore. Stand up high on the prow. Noble bark I steer. Steady course for the havens. Hew many foemen. Hew many foemen. My mother told me. Some day I would buy galleys with good oars and sails to distant shores. Stand up high on the prow. Noble bark I steer. Steady course for the havens. Hew many foemen. Hew many foemen. My mother told me. Some day I would buy galleys with good oars and sails to distant shores. Stand up high on the prow. Noble bark I steer. Steady course for the havens. Hew many foemen. My mother told me. Some day I would buy galleys with good oars and sails to distant shore. Stand up high on the prow. Noble bark I steer. Steady course for the havens. Hew many foemen. Hew many foemen. Hew many foemen. Chapter 23. As Isla sang, she moved through the crowd, touching each pack member with her fingers dipped in paint, marking them with warrior paint. Each place she touched began to glow, and the pack members could feel a powerful energy rushing through them, making them feel ready for the battle. By the end of the song, she made her way back to Aeron. He stood there waiting for her. Isla looked into his eyes as she dipped her hand again into the paint and pressed a hand-shaped mark over his heart. As she finished singing, she faced the crowd and smiled brightly. I give you my strength for this war. We will win, she shouted. The crowd roared with cheers. Right on time, the witch appeared. She looked very young and wore a black corset with a black see-through shirt draping over her shoulders. Her hair was as dark as a raven, and so were her eyes. She walked out of the darkness alone at first, but then two more witches appeared behind her, along with a bunch of rogue wolves who were already in their wolf forms, growling. The second witch had fiery red hair, and the third had bright purple hair. I see you brought friends, Isla said. Well, we have friends too. My name is Vanessa, the witch said. Aeron stepped forward. Witches, stop this. We don't have to fight. Let's solve this peacefully, he called. Vanessa looked at her companions and laughed mockingly. King Alpha Aeron, she said sarcastically. Such a mouthful. I prefer calling you dog. Aeron growled under his breath. What do you want? Isla yelled. Vanessa stepped closer, raising her eyebrows. You of course, dearie. You hurt a friend of mine, and I'm very loyal. Unlike you, fish girl, she hissed. Isla frowned, confused, and looked past her. Another figure stepped out, Calypso. He stood beside Vanessa. Aeron roared loudly. You stole my fiancé from me. Now it's my turn, Calypso shouted. I was never yours. Our engagement was forced. My brother, your king, broke it. I have no bond to you, Isla shouted back. Calypso's face turned red with anger. Isla, we're meant to be. You know it. I won't stop until you're mine, he screamed. I will never be yours. I belong to Aeron, now and forever. Isla yelled. We'll see, Calypso said darkly, nodding to the witches. The witches nodded at the rogues. Calypso had strong ties to witches since his mother was half witch and half mermaid. The rogues didn't have anything personal against the pack, they just wanted a reason to fight. The war began. Chapter 24. The packs changed into their wolf forms and began running at each other. Aeron gave one last look to his mate before turning into his big wolf and joining the others as they rushed forward. Isla focused all her strength on getting the witches first, knowing they could change everything with their magic. Isla ran straight toward Vanessa, jumping over rogues who tried to catch her. She raced at Vanessa with her hands ready, jumped into the air, pulled a knife from her belt, and landed hard on Vanessa, slicing her arm. Vanessa rolled away, grabbing her arm tightly, while Isla stood tall over her. Vanessa glared up at her and swung her leg, knocking Isla to the ground. A knife? Very original, Vanessa growled before punching Isla in the face. Isla's head jerked to the side, and she spat out blood before wiping her mouth with her arm. She turned back to Vanessa, her eyes glowing deep purple. She smiled darkly and placed her hand over Vanessa's chest. A wave of energy rushed through Isla's body into her palm, and a strong beam of light shot out, throwing Vanessa high into the air and crashing her down a few yards away. Isla got up quickly and ran at Vanessa again, but stopped as she towered over her. Before Isla could raise her hand to strike, Vanessa blasted her backward with magic. Vanessa then pulled out her own knife and swung it at Isla, but Isla ducked just in time. Isla waved her knife near Vanessa's neck, but Vanessa spun fast and managed to scratch Isla's side. Isla growled back at Vanessa, who just laughed wickedly and lifted her brows in challenge. Isla threw her knife down into the grass and jumped onto Vanessa, punching her hard in the face. Then she called water from the nearby stream and sent it crashing into Vanessa. Vanessa got knocked down again and struggled to stand, but the water kept pushing her back. Before Vanessa could use her magic, Isla rushed at her, waved her hands, and sent another big blast of power, knocking Vanessa out cold. Isla stood there, breathing hard, before turning to see the others still fighting. She noticed Aeron fighting a rogue while another was sneaking behind him. Isla sprinted over, jumped onto the rogue's back, and placed her hand on its neck, chanting some ancient words. The rogue immediately dropped into a deep sleep. Aeron turned and nodded to Isla before turning back to fight another rogue rushing at him. Isla dashed off toward more rogues, using her powers again and again. She ran back to grab her knife stuck in the ground. As she ran, a rogue raced straight at her. The rogue leaped through the air, and Isla slid underneath, grabbing her knife just as the rogue landed on her. But she was ready, and with a quick move, she stabbed the rogue in the heart. The battle was almost over. Most of the rogues were gone. Caelan stayed back, watching and waiting for the right time to catch Isla. The two other witches also stayed hidden, waiting. Soon the wolves defeated all the rogues. Aeron and Isla shared a happy smile, thinking it was almost finished. Cheers rose from the pack warriors. But just then, Isla felt a sharp pinch in her shoulder. Aeron shouted and sprinted toward her. Isla looked down and saw Vanessa had stabbed her. It felt strangely far away, like time had slowed. Aeron raced through the crowd, who gasped in shock. Before he reached her, Isla dropped to her knees and fell into his arms. At the same time, Alpha Zion grabbed Vanessa and tore off her head, making the other witches scream. They ran away, abandoning the fight. Caelan, seeing Isla hurt, also ran off quickly. Aeron cradled Isla, crying as his tears fell on her. "It's okay," Isla said softly, looking up at him. "Someone get the pack doctor." Aeron shouted. Everyone gathered around them, looking helpless. Some began to howl together, mourning for their Luna. "It's all right, Aeron. I'm dying in the arms of the only one I ever loved," Isla whispered. Aeron rocked her in his arms, crying. "Don't do this. I need you, Isla," he sobbed. The pack doctor finally pushed through the crowd and knelt down beside them. "Aeron, I need to check her," she said urgently. Aeron didn't want to let go, but Sienna gently pulled him back. He watched as Isla smiled softly at him one last time before her eyes closed. Aeron let out a loud, heartbroken howl, dropping to his knees. Everyone else knelt too and howled with him. The pack doctor, holding strong, quickly bandaged Isla. "Aeron, we need to get her to the infirmary now. I've stopped the bleeding a little, but I have to sew her up properly," she said. Without wasting time, Aeron scooped Isla up in his arms and sprinted back to the pack house. Sienna and the doctor ran behind him. Soon, Isla was lying in the infirmary. The doctor kicked Aeron and Sienna out to work on her. Hours passed. Everyone, both their pack and the visiting packs, sat waiting outside. Aeron finally returned to Isla's bedside and sat there, holding her hand, never leaving her side. Eventually, Isla woke up. She blinked slowly and saw Aeron sitting beside her, his head resting on the bed, still holding her hand tightly. She smiled at the sound of his soft snores. She looked around and spotted Sienna asleep in a chair nearby. Then her eyes landed on Alpha Roderick, who had just walked in carrying 2 hot drinks. When he saw her awake, he smiled brightly and stepped closer, setting the drinks down. "How are you feeling?" he asked kindly. "Better. Thank you," Isla said, her voice soft. "How long has it been?" Alpha Roderick chuckled. "Just a few hours. Now that you're awake, we can leave you to rest." "It's been an honor to fight by your side, Luna," he said, bowing respectfully. "Thank you, Alpha Roderick. You don't have to rush off," Isla said sweetly. The Alpha smiled warmly. "I must, Luna. My own Luna is waiting for me back at Dark Blood Pack," he said, giving a final nod before heading out. "Ah, wonderful. Why didn't she come?" Isla asked. Because she's giving me the best gift ever, a pup, he said, grinning brightly. Isla gasped, feeling a little jealous. What's your mate's name? Isla asked. Kaida, he answered. Hopefully, I'll meet her soon. Thank you for your help in this war, Alpha Roderick, Isla whispered. Anytime. You're one strong cookie, Alpha Roderick chuckled before turning away. He flicked Aiden's forehead and quickly ran out the door. Aiden woke up with a start, then his eyes found Isla giggling and holding her side. Ouch. Laughing hurts, Isla cried but kept smiling. Aiden reached out and hugged her tightly. Don't ever scare me like that again, he sobbed, waking Sienna up. Sienna rushed over and hugged Isla too. I'm not planning to get stabbed again, Aiden, Isla teased, making Aiden roll his eyes before he picked up her hand and kissed it softly. Months later, Isla was fully healed, and the war had ended. No one had seen Kaylin or the witches again, and life started going very smoothly. Aiden proposed to Isla not long after she got out of the hospital, and of course, she said yes. She traveled to Atlantica to visit her parents and her brother, Thaddeus. When she told them the news about her engagement, they were overjoyed. Aiden and Isla had their wedding on a boat so that Isla's family and the entire Atlantica kingdom could attend and bless them. After the wedding, they spent their honeymoon alone in their house near the Packlands. They had thought about traveling abroad, but Isla secretly decided against flying because she was already pregnant, though she didn't tell Aiden yet. Chapter 25. Isla's point of view. Today was the day I was going to tell Aiden. It was his birthday, and I couldn't think of a better moment. Sienna had helped me prepare his special gift, and she was the only one who knew, besides the pack doctor. Everything had to be perfect. The moon goddess had finally answered my prayers. I set up a picnic for Aiden and me in the garden he made just for me. Sienna helped me hang fairy lights and set up candles to make everything magical. It had been so hard to keep the secret these past few weeks, especially with his wolf senses that could pick up every little thing, even hormone changes. Luckily, he had been busy helping other packs, so he hadn't noticed anything. Finally, the evening came, and I had been dodging him all day. He was busy too, but we promised the evening would be ours. I hurried to the garden and called him to meet me there. As I waited, my nerves twisted in my belly, and I thought I might throw up. Morning sickness was no joke. Thankfully, I didn't throw up right there. When Aiden walked around the corner, I yelled, "Happy birthday." His big smile made everything worth it. Isla, this is amazing, Aiden said, looking around at the decorations before scooping me into a hug. I have a present for you, and I've been hiding it for a while, I squealed. Aiden raised his brows in curiosity, taking the wicker basket from me. We sat down together, and he opened the basket. He paused when he saw what was inside: a tiny soft baby blanket, a tiny pair of socks, a little dummy clip, a small baby hat, and a plaque that said, "Little Wolf coming soon." Aiden's eyes shot up to meet mine. I nodded with tears gathering in my eyes. He gently placed the basket down and pulled me onto his lap. "This is the best birthday gift ever." "Thank you so much, Isla," he cried. "There's another surprise," I said excitedly. "There's a cake Sienna made. Inside the cake, the icing will show if we're having a boy or a girl." I handed him the cake knife and moved the cake closer. Aiden grinned at me before slicing the cake. When he pulled the piece out, the icing inside was bright blue. We both screamed and hugged tightly. It was perfect. Weeks passed, and I was 3 months along. Even though I had my mermaid side, I was feeling every bit of human pregnancy symptoms that most werewolf mates didn't get. I spent most of my time trying to sleep through the worst of it. Kelly and Sienna often brought me food and helped when I felt sick, especially when Aiden had to be away for pack work. When the pack barbecue day came, Aiden was busy meeting with Alpha Roderick, and I didn't feel like leaving the room without him. So I told everyone to go have fun, and I enjoyed having the quiet house all to myself. I ran downstairs to grab some ice cream. It was a super hot day, and on my way back to my room, I closed the door behind me. That's when I heard it. "Isla," a voice said. I spun around, dropping the ice cream and smashing the bowl. "Kaylin," I gasped. "Please forgive me," he said, stepping closer. "I never wanted anyone hurt during the war. We belong together. When you got stabbed, I panicked and ran. I heard you survived, so I had to come back for you." I held up a hand to stop him and placed the other hand over my small baby bump. Kalen's eyes went wide and angry. He hadn't noticed my bump under the nightgown until I pressed my hand there. Kalen, leave now. Don't make this worse, I warned him. You've made a huge mistake, Isla. You mated with that dog. This isn't over, he roared before jumping out the window and disappearing. I quickly called Sienna and told her what happened. I didn't want Aeron to worry, especially since he wouldn't be back for 2 more days. Chapter 26. Moon Goddess Point of View. Sienna rushed to the pack house to help calm Isla down. She begged to call Aeron, but Isla said no, she didn't want him to panic. After Kalen left that day, he went back to the small house he had rented since he wasn't welcome anymore in the kingdom of Atlantica. He began plotting. He decided to rent a boat and head for the sea. Pirates. You don't hear about them much anymore. Earlier in the story, you might remember someone named Drakestorm when Isla first went to the surface. Now, Drake wasn't a pirate with a parrot or an eye patch or a hook for a hand. But he was a pirate in the real way, ruthless and mean. He took what he wanted and never gave anything back. He had no heart at all. Drake had killed many without ever feeling bad about it. He was once a rogue wolf who got kicked out of his pack for being violent. Instead of staying on land and getting crushed by stronger packs, he took to the seas. He hardly came to land unless it was to find more rogues, not that he needed to try. Everyone knew the rogue alpha. He didn't have to beg anyone to join him. Other rogue wolves found him. His name meant one thing: destruction and bloodshed. Living up to his name, Drakestorm caused endless death and chaos. People often said that dark souls pull each other together. That's exactly what happened between Kalen and Drake. Kalen had a plan, but he knew he couldn't pull it off alone. He needed help from a pirate, a werewolf pirate. After renting a small boat, Kalen set out to search for Drake. He wanted Drake's help to commit a murder. Kalen spent days at sea until he finally spotted Drakestorm's huge ship. Compared to Kalen's rented boat, Drake's ship looked like a mouse next to an elephant. It was huge and full of crew members. Drakestorm. I want to make a deal. Kalen yelled up, hoping Drake would hear him. Drake was famous for making deals, and even more famous for breaking them whenever he wanted something more. If he didn't think he was getting the better end of the deal, he would simply break it and take what he wanted. Soon, Drake appeared, the rogue alpha, the king of the seas. He leaned over the side of the ship, staring down at what he thought was just a human. Even after all his time on the ocean, Drake had never seen a mermaid and didn't believe in them beyond the old tales. What's your deal, human? Drake called down. I need you to kill someone for me. Kalen shouted back. That caught Drake's attention, and he allowed Kalen to climb aboard. Once on deck, Kalen quickly explained, someone stole my fiancée and brainwashed her. I want her back. If you kill him, I'll give you a great reward. And what would that reward be? Drake asked, rubbing his chin. What do you want? Kalen replied, thinking Drake would ask for money. I want a night with your fiancée. Just to see if she's worth it, Drake snickered. His crew laughed along, watching Kalen fume. Fine, Kalen growled, giving in. What's her name? Drake asked. Isla. She's married to Aeron Blackwood, Kalen replied. Drake's eyes widened, and he exchanged glances with his crew. I would gladly do this for you, friend, Drake said with a wicked laugh, throwing his arm around Kalen. Meanwhile, at the pack house, Isla was getting ready for bed. She slipped into a pale pink silk nightgown that stopped at mid-thigh, covering herself with a long silk robe. She lit her candle and said her nightly prayer to me. She let her long platinum blonde hair out of its bun, letting it tumble down to her waist. She brushed through her hair gently and walked toward the bed. As she pulled the covers back, a voice echoed from the darkness, only the candle lit the room. Isla gasped and spun around. Isla. Such a beautiful name for a beautiful human, the voice teased. I didn't think Aeron, the big bad alpha king, would ever pick a human mate, the voice sneered. Where are you? Show yourself, coward. Isla snapped. She rushed toward the light switch, but before she could reach it, Drake punched her hard in the face, making her pass out. Drake then turned on the light and looked over the small human lying on the floor. He crouched beside her, pushed her hair out of her face, and looked her over carefully. He noticed her small baby bump but didn't feel a thing. Hurting a pregnant woman meant nothing to him. He grabbed her hand, slid off her engagement and wedding rings, and placed them carefully on the bed with a note. He then picked up Isla and threw her over his shoulder. He ran out the window, sprinting through the forest down to the beach. His crew was ready, waiting by the ship. Drake handed Isla up to one of the crew and climbed aboard himself. They laid her down, and Drake smirked wickedly. "She's too pretty to just hand over, don't you think, boys?" he laughed. The crew chuckled and went back to their duties while Drake kept staring at Isla. He lifted her again and carried her into his quarters, tying her up before leaving the room. When he stepped back onto the deck, Kaelin was there, fighting against 2 crewmen. "I saw you have her. Give her to me," Kaelin yelled, struggling. "I don't think so," Drake said with a cruel laugh. Kaelin got even angrier. "We had a deal," he shouted. Drake rushed at him, making Kaelin freeze as the crew pinned him still. Drake leaned in so close their noses almost touched. "I don't make deals with humans. And she's too good to give away," Drake sneered. Without warning, Drake stabbed a knife into Kaelin's stomach. Kaelin gasped and collapsed to the floor, clutching his wound. "Callum, toss him back into his tiny boat," Drake ordered lazily. "I don't want him staining my deck." The crew dragged Kaelin away as Drake turned back toward his quarters where Isla had started to wake up. Isla, even with her hands tied, quickly prayed to me. I heard her prayer, but things weren't finished yet. There was a bigger reason behind everything. She would find out soon. Isla struggled to sit up. Drake entered the room, and Isla glared at him. "You must be really stupid. I'm the Alpha King's wife. He'll come and destroy you," Isla growled. Drake just laughed and perched on the dresser, watching her. "Funny. A little human begged me to grab you. But now that he's dead, I think I'll keep you for myself," Drake smirked. Meanwhile, back at the pack house, Aeron came home earlier than expected to surprise Isla with breakfast. When he stepped into the room, he realized something was very wrong. Isla wasn't there, and by the faintness of her scent, she hadn't been there for a long time. Her fear scent still hung in the air. Aeron rushed to the bed and found her engagement and wedding rings laid carefully beside a folded note. Dread filled his heart as he picked up the note, recognizing the scent immediately. "Aeron, I have your wife. She's mine now. Come find her and we'll have round 2. See you soon, cousin." Chapter 27. Aeron roared so loud the whole pack house shook awake. He stormed outside, calling every warrior to gather in the garden immediately. Within seconds, all the warriors, Aeron and Sienna were standing outside. "Your Luna has been taken," Aeron announced. "By Drake Storm, the rogue Alpha," he said, making everyone gasp. Everyone knew Drake Storm. He was a villain that parents warned kids about at bedtime. Aeron had faced Drake before, and it hadn't ended well. When Aeron had become Alpha, Drake, who was older, turned bitter and dark. He had wanted the Alpha title badly, but the previous Alpha knew Drake would be a terrible leader. Drake had been called weak many times, and it broke him. He abandoned his family and pack laws, choosing to run away and make his own lawless group for rogues without homes. When Kaelin gave Drake the chance to hurt Aeron, Drake didn't think twice. He took it gladly. It was sad, really. Their friendship had once been legendary. They had been extremely close as kids until their 18th birthday, when the next Alpha was chosen. That choice tore a huge gap between them. Aeron gathered his pack warriors and rushed to the beach. They grabbed the boats and shoved them into the water. Aeron clutched Isla's wedding rings tightly and kissed them, looking up to the sky. "Moon goddess, please help me bring her home," Aeron prayed. But it was no longer in my hands. The events had been set into motion long before they were even born. They reached Drake Storm's ship and quickly climbed aboard, grabbing the attention of every rogue around. Aeron looked around carefully but didn't spot Isla or Drake, though he could feel them close by. "Drake, come out here," Aeron roared. Hearing her mate's voice, Isla screamed for him. Aeron's wolf inside him went wild, sensing her fear and pain, and something else about her scent had changed. Soon, a door opened and Drake stepped out with an evil grin on his face. He closed the door behind him, leaving Isla lying in her own blood inside. "Nice of you to finally show up. These last 15 hours have been a real party," he taunted. As Aeron tried to step forward, the rogues attacked. Within moments, the whole pack was forced to their knees, each surrounded by 1 or 2 rogues. They were badly outnumbered. Aeron was forced to kneel too. "Where's my wife, Drake?" Aeron growled. "Oh cousin. I don't think she's yours anymore." "Not after I'm finished," Drake sneered. Aeron growled low in his chest, and the pack warriors growled with him. They all loved Isla deeply. She had fought with them for them, during the war against the rogues and witches. She had proven herself family. Drake laughed cruelly at the sight of Aeron brought so low. "Enjoy the show," he mocked, turning to go back into the room to continue hurting Isla, who cried and fought under him. Aeron and his warriors had no choice but to listen to her screams without being able to help. Inside, Isla lay bleeding, silently begging for strength. She closed her eyes, and I appeared before her. "Moon goddess, please. I can't take this anymore," she cried out in her mind. I knelt in front of her. "I am here. Just a little longer. You have been so brave, but you must stay strong. You are Luna Queen Isla Waverly. You are the queen. You must be strong for your kingdom." "I am Luna Queen Isla Waverly. I am a queen. I must be strong for my kingdom," Isla repeated to herself. After Drake was done again, he yanked Isla up onto her feet. She was weak, bleeding heavily, and shaking from fear and cold, but inside she knew she had to stay strong. Drake grabbed her roughly by the back of the neck and dragged her out where the pack could see her. He shoved her down onto her knees. Aeron broke at the sight of her, and Isla couldn't even lift her eyes to meet his. "Kit," he cried. She still didn't lift her gaze. She kept staring at the ground, where her blood and her son's blood now stained the wood. The other pack members respectfully turned their eyes away. Isla moved her trembling hand to her belly and sobbed. That was when Aeron understood. Her scent, it had changed. He realized what Drake had done. Aeron tried to lunge at Drake, but two rogues grabbed him and held him back. "Now, Isla, any last words?" Drake sneered, pulling her up by her hair. He pressed a knife against her neck, then gave her a moment to speak. That's when she began to sing. Song, "Hoist the Colors" by Hans Zimmer, Ted Elliott, Terry Rossio. "The king and his men stole the queen from her bed, and bound her in her bones. The seas be ours and by the powers. Where we will, we'll roam." Isla sang, her voice steady as she looked at her pack. Slowly, the other warriors joined in. "Yo-ho, hold together. Hoist the colors high. Heave-ho, thieves and beggars. Never shall we die." As the song ended, Drake saw his chance. He rushed forward and dragged the knife across Isla's neck. Aeron screamed, breaking free of the rogues and running to her. But it was too late. Isla's eyes opened briefly, a single tear slipping out, before her body went still. Aeron howled in agony, and his warriors dropped to their knees, howling with him. They had lost their Luna. Aeron bowed his head, gathering her lifeless body into his arms. Tears dripped onto her face as he gently closed her eyes. "I will kill you," Aeron vowed as he was dragged away from her. "Throw her overboard." "I'm done with her," Drake laughed. One of the rogues picked up her body and tossed it into the sea, even as Aeron begged them not to. The moment her body hit the water, storm clouds gathered above. The sky turned dark and gray. Rain started to fall. Drake and the others looked up, surprised by the sudden change in the weather. Still, Drake kept going. "Now where were we? Ah yes, who's next?" Drake chuckled, wiping his knife on the rail. But before anyone could answer, the waves suddenly shifted. The ship rocked hard as the storm worsened. Chapter 28. Suddenly, a voice rose from the sea. Everyone, Drake, the rogues, Aeron and his pack, looked around panicked and confused. Song, "Hoist the Colors," epic version by Samuel Kim. "The king and his men stole the queen from her bed, and bound her in her bones. The seas be ours and by the powers. Where we will, we'll roam." The voice was darker and sweeter than before. Aeron's heart swelled. It sounded like Isla, but distant, like an echo. Soon the pack warriors joined in, singing louder as the storm grew fiercer. "Yo-ho, hold together. Hoist the colors high. Heave-ho, thieves and beggars. Never shall we die." Drake began to panic as the pack kept singing. And just then, Isla appeared. She stood on the other side of the ship, fully healed, rain running down her face. Aeron smiled in wonder, while Drake looked completely stunned. "Yo-ho, hold together. Hoist the colors high. Heave-ho, thieves and beggars. Never shall we die. As the next verse began, Isla smirked at Drake and turned her head toward the ocean. Everyone followed her gaze, and there, rising out of the water, were mermaids and mermen staring straight at the ship. Isla smiled and faced Drake again. Yo-ho, hold together. Hoist the colors high. Heave-ho, thieves and beggars. Never shall we die. As the song grew louder, Isla walked down the steps, the rain soaking her gown. Drake stepped back, signaling his rogue to attack her. The rogue lunged, but Isla used her powers to grab him with water, pulling him under the waves. Other rogues tried to come at her, but they met the same fate, dragged into the sea by the swirling waters. Yo-ho, hold together. Hoist the colors high. Heave-ho, thieves and beggars. Never shall we die. As the song ended, every rogue except Drake had been defeated. Isla moved forward and grabbed Aiden's hand, hugging him tightly. Aiden looked over at Drake and growled, stepping ahead. Isla placed her hand on his chest. Let me, she said softly. Aiden smiled and stepped back. Drake leaned against the wall as Isla came closer. You were dead. How? Drake asked in shock. Isla laughed darkly. Next time, don't mess with a mermaid, Isla growled at him. Drake's face froze in shock as Isla snatched the knife from his hand and raised it, ready to stab him straight in the heart. Stop! A voice screamed. Aiden and Isla turned around and saw Lydia stepping onto the ship. Why? You don't know what he did. Isla cried, holding the knife close to Drake's neck, her face next to his. Isla, please. Don't do this. He's my mate, Lydia pleaded. Aiden and Isla's eyes widened in disbelief as Drake smirked smugly. Isla lowered the knife as Lydia walked closer, her eyes fixed firmly on Drake. It's been a long time, Jia, Drake said, looking down at her. Not long enough, Lydia answered coldly. Lydia had been part of the same childhood friend group with Aiden and Drake. They had been as close as 3 peas in a pod. Never in her life did Lydia imagine she would be mated to Drake. Drake. The moon goddess paired me with you, but that doesn't mean we are meant to stay together, Lydia said, backing away from him. It's exactly what it means, Drake chuckled, loving the idea that this would hurt Aiden even more, him being mated to Aiden's beta. No, Drake. You are not my mate. I prayed long and hard about this. I knew it had to be you since it took so long to find my mate. I didn't come here to save you, Drake. I came to say goodbye, Lydia said, stepping back and nodding at Isla. Isla gave a small smile before plunging the knife deep into Drake's heart. It was finally over. Isla walked over to Thaddeus and the other merfolk, thanking them for their help. Thaddeus used his water powers to lift himself up onto the ship, where Isla wrapped her arms around her brother. Thank you, brother, Isla whispered. Any time, little sister, he replied warmly. When Isla's lifeless body had fallen into the sea earlier, Thaddeus immediately sensed her presence and rushed to save her. The song she had sung was an ancient siren song, only sung in times of great danger. Isla starting the song had sent a call to mermaids and mermen from all over. After Drake's death, everyone went home. Isla was taken to the pack doctor to be checked over, but her body was fully healed already, thanks to her brother's magic. The only wounds left were the ones inside her heart. She went back to her room, walked to the mirror, and stared at her reflection. She turned to the side and placed her hand on her flat, toned stomach. There was no bump. Nothing at all. Aiden quietly entered the room, seeing his mate standing there filled with sadness. Isla, we need to talk about it, Aiden said gently as he walked toward her. She turned to him with a frown. What is there to talk about? She asked, a single tear sliding down her cheek. You died, Isla. You were dead. I don't understand how you think there's nothing to talk about. What about our child? Aiden said, his voice cracking. Isla pulled away from him and wiped her tears quickly. I don't want to talk about it, she said firmly. But we need to, Aiden insisted. Isla turned back toward him, fresh tears sliding down her face. Please. Don't make me. Drake did things to me that I'll never forget. I still feel his hands. She choked, holding back a sob. Aiden quickly pulled her into his arms, letting their mate bond start to heal the wounds inside her soul. What can I do? Aiden whispered, fighting the pain in his own heart. Time. I need time, Isla answered. And that's exactly what he gave her. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe, like and share this video if you enjoyed this masterpiece. I would like to hear your opinions about this story. Do you like it?